Private Vincent Hall's heart pounds as he steps onto the alien soil of Yatter, acutely aware that his role as a lowly human soldier has just been thrust into a high-stakes diplomatic mission. The stunning beauty beside him, Princess Daphne, exiled heir to the Yatteran throne, stands in stark contrast to his own unremarkable appearance. Their transport ship touches down on a hidden landing pad, concealed within the lush, otherworldly foliage of Yatter's equatorial jungle. Vincent scans the area, his military training kicking in as he assesses potential threats. The human military's decision to assign him as Daphne's bodyguard still baffles him, but he's determined to prove himself worthy of the task. Daphne's eyes, a mesmerizing swirl of purple and gold, meet Vincent's. Her delicate features, beautiful by both human and Yatteran standards, betray a hint of nervousness. She's been living in hiding on Earth since a coup led by her power-hungry cousin forced her into exile. Now, she's returned to reclaim her rightful place as ruler, a move that could secure a crucial alliance for humanity. The air is thick with humidity and the scent of alien flora. Vincent's grip tightens on his pulse rifle as he escorts Daphne down the ship's ramp. The rest of the human delegation follows, their footsteps muffled by the dense undergrowth. Suddenly, the jungle erupts in chaos. Energy bolts sizzle through the air, striking the ship's hull. Vincent reacts instantly, pulling Daphne to the ground as return fire from the human security team lights up the forest. "Ambush!" someone shouts. Forces loyal to Daphne's cousin have been lying in wait, determined to prevent the princess from reaching the capital. In the confusion, Vincent and Daphne become separated from the others. He grabs her hand, leading her away from the firefight and deeper into the alien jungle. The sounds of battle fade behind them as they push through unfamiliar vegetation, Vincent's training barely preparing him for the bizarre and potentially deadly flora they encounter. As they pause to catch their breath, Daphne turns to Vincent, her voice low and urgent. "There's something you need to know," she says. "I possess information about a secret Yatteran superweapon, one that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy." Vincent's eyes widen as he processes this revelation. His mission has suddenly become far more complex. He's now responsible not only for Daphne's safety, but potentially for the future of human-Yatteran relations and galactic stability. As they trek through the dense foliage, Vincent finds himself stealing glances at the exiled princess. Despite their vast differences in rank and species, he can't help but feel drawn to her strength and determination. Daphne, in turn, begins to see beyond Vincent's lowly status, appreciating his quick thinking and unwavering dedication to her safety. The alien sun begins to set, casting an eerie glow through the translucent leaves above. Vincent and Daphne must find shelter for the night, aware that Yatteran patrols and dangerous indigenous creatures pose constant threats. As they work together to create a hidden camp, their initial mistrust gives way to a growing bond. Vincent realizes that their journey to the Yatteran capital will be fraught with danger. They must navigate not only the physical challenges of the alien landscape, but also the complex political web that led to Daphne's exile. As night falls on Yatter, Vincent stands watch, his mind racing with the enormity of his task and the unexpected feelings stirring within him for the alien princess he's sworn to protect. As the alien night deepened, Vincent's vigilant watch was interrupted by a rustling in the nearby foliage. His hand instinctively tightened on his pulse rifle, but the tension eased as a familiar purple-gold gaze met his own. Daphne emerged from her makeshift shelter, her live form silhouetted against the bioluminescent flora. "We need to move," she whispered, her voice tinged with urgency. "I've been analyzing our options, and I believe I know someone who can help us infiltrate the capital." Vincent nodded, quickly gathering their meager supplies. As they set off through the dense jungle, Daphne explained her plan. She spoke of Zarek, a former general of the Yatteran military who had fallen from grace. Despite his disgrace, Zarek's opposition to the current regime made him a potential ally. The journey to Zarek's hidden compound was treacherous. Vincent and Daphne navigated through terrain that seemed designed to repel intruders. Carnivorous plants with razor-sharp leaves, swamps that emitted noxious gases, and rock formations that shifted unpredictably. Their progress was slow but steady. As dawn broke, casting an otherworldly glow across the landscape, they finally reached their destination. Zarek's compound was a masterpiece of camouflage, seamlessly blending with the surrounding jungle. It took Daphne's keen Yadrin senses to locate the hidden entrance. The former general greeted them with cautious suspicion. Zarek was a grizzled veteran, his weathered face a map of past battles. His eyes, a deep crimson, scrutinized Vincent with particular intensity. "You bring a human to our world, princess?" Zarek's voice was gravelly, tinged with a mix of curiosity and disdain. Daphne straightened, her regal bearing shining through despite their arduous journey. "This human has saved my life and proven himself a valuable ally. We need your help, Zarek." Over the next hours, they outlined their situation. Zarek listened intently, his expression growing grimmer with each revelation. When Daphne mentioned the secret superweapon, the former general's eyes widened in shock. "By the ancient stars," he muttered, "if what you say is true, the consequences could be catastrophic." Zarek paced the room, his military mind clearly working through strategies. Finally, he turned to face them. "There might be a way," he began. "An ancient network of tunnels, known only to a select few in the military. They lead directly into the heart of the capital." Vincent felt a surge of hope. "Can you guide us through them?" Zarek nodded solemnly. "I can do more than that. I'll join you." The trio spent the next day preparing for their infiltration. Zarek provided them with detailed maps of the tunnel system and intelligence on the capital's current defenses. As night fell, they set out for the hidden tunnel entrance. The passageway was narrow and oppressively dark. Vincent activated a small light on his gear, casting eerie shadows on the ancient stone walls. The air was thick and stale, making breathing difficult. Daphne, unaccustomed to such confined spaces, pressed close to Vincent. He could feel the warmth of her body, smell the alien yet intoxicating scent of her skin. The physical proximity sent a jolt of electricity through him, intensifying the complex emotions he'd been grappling with since their journey began. As they navigated the labyrinthine tunnels, Zarek shared more details about the Yadrin superweapon. "It's a device capable of manipulating gravitational fields," he explained in hushed tones. "In the wrong hands, it could destroy entire star systems." The gravity of their mission deeply affected on Vincent. The fate of not just Yatter, but potentially the entire galaxy, rested on their success. Their progress was suddenly halted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Vincent quickly doused his light, plunging them into total darkness. The unmistakable clank of Yadrin military boots echoed through the tunnel. "Loyalist guards," Zarek whispered. "We have no choice but to engage." In the cramped confines of the tunnel, the ensuing combat was fierce and chaotic. Vincent's human combat training proved surprisingly effective against the Yadrin fighters. He moved with calculated precision, using the narrow space to his advantage. To his amazement, Daphne fought alongside him with unexpected grace and skill. Her movements were fluid and deadly, a stark contrast to her usual refined demeanor. Together, they formed an formidable team, quickly overwhelming the Loyalist guards. As the last opponent fell, Vincent turned to Daphne, seeing her in a new light. She met his gaze, her chest heaving from exertion, a fierce pride in her eyes. In that moment, the connection between them deepened, transcending the barriers of species and station. Zarek's voice broke the spell. "We must move quickly. It won't be long before they're missed." They pressed on, eventually emerging into a vast chamber filled with ancient Yadrin artifacts. Daphne gasped, her eyes fixed on a small, ornate object resting on a pedestal. "The royal circlet," she breathed, reverently lifting the delicate piece. "I never thought I'd see it again. This is proof of my right to rule." As Daphne placed the circlet on her head, a sense of purpose seemed to radiate from her. Vincent couldn't help but be awed by her transformation. She was every inch a queen. Their moment of triumph was short-lived. The distant sound of celebration reached their ears. Zarek's expression darkened. "The coronation ceremony. Your cousin is about to be crowned the new ruler of Yatter." Vincent's mind raced. This could be our chance. The chaos of the ceremony could provide the perfect cover. Zarek nodded, a sly smile crossing his face. "I have an idea, but it's risky, and you'll need to trust me completely." As the former general outlined his daring plan, Vincent and Daphne exchanged a look. Despite the dangers ahead, there was a shared understanding between them. Whatever challenges awaited in the royal court, they would face them together. The ancient tunnels gave way to the opulent grandeur of the Yatteran palace as Vincent, Daphne, and Zarek emerged from their hidden passageway. They paused briefly, adjusting their disguises and steeling themselves for what lay ahead. "Remember," Zarek whispered, his crimson eyes scanning the bustling corridor, "we're here to gather intelligence and support. No rash moves." Vincent nodded, acutely aware of the pulse rifle concealed beneath his ambassadorial robes. He offered his arm to Daphne, who had transformed into a vision of alien beauty. Her purple-gold eyes, now obscured by a shimmering veil, met his with a mix of purpose and nervousness. They strode purposefully towards a grand hall, their steps echoing on the polished stone floor. The din of the coronation ceremony grew louder as they approached. Vincent's military training kicked in as he assessed the layout, noting potential exits and vantage points. As they entered the vast chamber, the trio was engulfed by a sea of Yatteran nobility. The air hummed with excitement and the sweet scent of alien flora. Ornate chandeliers bathed the scene in a soft, otherworldly glow, their light refracting off the crystalline structures that adorned the walls. Vincent leaned close to Daphne, his lips barely moving as he spoke. "Stay alert. We need to blend in and gather as much information as possible." They circulated through the crowd, their ears attuned to the undercurrent of political discourse. Fragments of conversation reached them, hinting at growing discontent among some of the nobles. "The humans grow bolder by the day," one Yatteran official muttered to his companion. "This new leadership must show strength." Another voice, lower and more cautious, responded, "But at what cost? Our economy relies on interstellar trade. We cannot afford isolation." Vincent filed away these snippets, building a mental picture of the complex political landscape. He noticed Zarek had disappeared into the crowd, no doubt pursuing his own leads. The ceremony progressed, and Vincent found himself swept into a traditional Yatteran dance with Daphne. The intricate steps brought them closer than ever before, their bodies moving in perfect synchronization. Vincent's heart raced, not just from the exertion, but from the intensity of Daphne's gaze. As they twirled across the floor, Vincent became aware of the attention they were attracting. Several Yatteran officials watched them with interest, whispering among themselves. The dance ended, and they retreated to the edge of the hall, both slightly breathless. Before they could catch their breath, a regal Yatteran woman approached them. Her bearing and the deference shown to her by others marked her as a person of significant influence. "I don't believe we've been introduced," she said, her voice smooth and cultured. "I am Lady Zora. I must say, your dancing was quite impressive." Vincent bowed slightly, adopting the manner he'd observed in other dignitaries. "Thank you, Lady Zora. I am Ambassador Ven, and this is my consort, Lady Dila." Zora's eyes narrowed slightly, a hint of suspicion in her gaze. "Interesting. I don't recall seeing your names on the guest list. From which system do you hail?" Vincent's mind raced, improvising a backstory on the spot. We represent a coalition of independent traders from the Outer Rim. Our presence here is unofficial, you might say. Daphne placed a hand on Vincent's arm, her touch steadying him. We've long admired Yatter's rich culture, she added, her voice musical and assured. When we heard of the coronation, we simply couldn't resist the opportunity to witness such a historic event. Zora seemed to relax slightly, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Well, you've certainly made an impression. Perhaps we could discuss your trading interests later. I find myself curious about your coalition. As Zora moved away, Vincent and Daphne exchanged a look of relief. They had passed the first test, but they knew many more challenges lay ahead. The coronation ceremony reached its climax as Daphne's cousin took the stage. The usurper's voice boomed through the hall, filled with charisma and thinly veiled threats. Vincent tensed as he heard the xenophobic undertones in the speech, noting the discomfort it caused among the alien dignitaries present. Just then, Zarek reappeared at Vincent's side, discreetly passing him a data chip. "Evidence of the coup," he murmured. "Off-world involvement. Use it wisely." Vincent's mind whirled with the implications. He looked at Daphne, seeing the same conflict in her eyes. They had come here seeking information and support, but now they held the power to potentially unravel the entire ceremony. As the crown hovered above the usurper's head, Vincent made a split-second decision. He stumbled forward, colliding with a servant carrying a tray of ceremonial wine. The resulting crash echoed through the hall, all eyes turning to the source of the disturbance. In the ensuing chaos, Daphne slipped away, maneuvering closer to the throne. Vincent watched as she subtly revealed the royal circlet to key members of the nobility, sowing seeds of doubt and recognition. The usurper's voice cut through the commotion, demanding order. But the damage was done. Whispers rippled through the crowd, and Vincent noticed several alien diplomats quietly excusing themselves. As the ceremony struggled to regain its momentum, Vincent locked eyes with Daphne across the crowded hall. In that moment, they both knew that every action from this point on would shape not just their fate, but the future of Yatter itself. The tension in the grand hall was palpable as Vincent's gaze darted between Daphne, Zarek, and the data chip in his hand. The next move they made would irrevocably alter the course of events, and the weight of that decision pressed heavily upon him. Vincent's fingers tightened around the data chip, feeling its weight as both evidence and weapon. He locked eyes with Daphne across the crowded hall, a silent understanding passing between them. It was time to act. In that moment, Vincent made his move. He stumbled forward, colliding with a servant carrying a tray of ceremonial wine. The resulting crash echoed through the hall, all eyes turning to the source of the disturbance. Glasses shattered, and the deep purple liquid splashed across the polished floor, creating a momentary distraction. Seizing the opportunity, Daphne began to move. She weaved through the startled crowd with grace and purpose, her steps sure despite the chaos. As she approached the throne, her hand moved to her face, fingers grasping the edge of her shimmering veil. Vincent watched, his heart pounding, as Daphne reached the foot of the dais. In one fluid motion, she cast aside her disguise, revealing her true identity. The veil fluttered to the ground, and a collective gasp rippled through the assembly. "People of Yatter," Daphne's voice rang out, clear and commanding. "I am Princess Daphne, rightful heir to the throne." The usurper cousin, caught mid-sentence in his coronation speech, stared in shock. His face contorted with rage as recognition dawned. "Seize her," he bellowed, pointing at Daphne with a trembling finger. Guards moved to obey, their boots thundering against the marble floor. Vincent sprang into action, his combat training taking over. He vaulted over a nearby table, scattering elaborate floral arrangements, and landed between Daphne and the approaching guards. The first guard reached for his weapon, but Vincent was faster. He struck with precision, targeting vulnerable points in the Yadran anatomy. The guard crumpled, and Vincent spun to face the next threat. The grand hall erupted into chaos. Nobles scrambled to distance themselves from the conflict, while others stood frozen in disbelief. Alien diplomats huddled together, eyeing the exits warily. Amidst the pandemonium, Zarek moved with purpose. He slipped from group to group, pressing data chips into the hands of key Yadran officials. "The truth about the coup," he whispered urgently. "Off-world involvement. See for yourself." Vincent fought with controlled fury, his movements economical and effective. He used the Yadran's larger size against them, ducking under their swings and striking at weak points. But he was outnumbered, and fatigue began to set in. Just as it seemed Vincent might be overwhelmed, a commanding voice cut through the chaos. "Enough!" Lady Zora strode forward, her regal bearing parting the crowd. She fixed the usurper with determined eyes. "I have seen the evidence. This coup was orchestrated with off-world support, in violation of our most sacred laws." Her words sent a shockwave through the assembly. Murmurs of discontent grew louder, and several nobles stepped away from the usurper's side. Zora turned to face the crowd, her voice ringing with authority. "I, Lady Zora of House Valen, hereby declare my support for Princess Daphne, true heir to the throne of Yadar." The tide of the room shifted palpably. More nobles began to gather around Daphne, forming a protective circle. The usurper cousin, his face pale with the realization of his crumbling power, began to edge towards a side exit. His escape was cut short as a group of Yadran military officers blocked his path. "In light of this evidence," their leader announced, "we can no longer support your claim. You are under arrest for treason against the crown." As the deposed cousin was led away, Daphne ascended the steps to the throne. She stood before it, her posture straight and proud, but did not sit. Instead, she addressed the assembled crowd. "My people," she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall, "I return to you in a time of great change and challenge. Our world stands at a crossroads, and the path we choose will shape our future for generations to come." Vincent watched her, marveling at the transformation. Gone was any trace of the nervous exile he had first met. In her place stood a true leader, her words captivating the audience. "We cannot isolate ourselves from the galaxy," Daphne continued. "Our strength lies not in fear and xenophobia, but in cooperation and understanding. I envision a Yada that embraces its place in the interstellar community, forging new alliances while honoring our traditions." Her words resonated with many, though Vincent noticed a few faces twisted in disapproval. Not all were pleased with this vision of a more open Yadar. As Daphne concluded her impromptu speech, the crowd erupted into cheers and applause. Vincent found himself thrust into the spotlight as nobles and officials turned to him with newfound respect. "The human who aided our princess," he heard them whisper. "Perhaps we have misjudged their kind." In the midst of the celebration, Vincent's eyes met Daphne's. The connection between them felt electric, charged with the intensity of their shared ordeal and triumph. For a moment, the rest of the world seemed to fade away. Their private moment was shattered as Zarek appeared at Vincent's side, his expression grave. "We have a problem," he hissed urgently. "The superweapon has been activated." Vincent's blood ran cold. "Who?" "The cousin's most loyal supporters," Zarek explained quickly. "They're threatening to use it against the capital unless Daphne abdicates." The implications of this new threat hit Vincent like a physical blow. All they had accomplished could be undone in an instant. He looked to Daphne, seeing the same realization dawning in her eyes. As the three of them huddled together, rapidly formulating a plan to neutralize this new threat, Vincent felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. The fate of Yada and perhaps the entire galaxy now rested in their hands. The celebration in the grand hall continued around them, oblivious to the new danger. Vincent knew that the true test of their abilities, and of the fledgling alliance between humans and Yadrins, was yet to come. The celebration in the grand hall continued around them, oblivious to the new danger. Vincent knew that the true test of their abilities, and of the fledgling alliance between humans and Yadrins, was yet to come. "We need to move," Vincent said, his voice low and urgent. "Where's the weapon located?" Zarek's eyes darted around the room, ensuring no one was listening. "The mountain complex in the Kelder Range," he whispered. "It's heavily fortified." Daphne nodded, her expression grim. "We'll need a fast ship." Without hesitation, the trio slipped away from the festivities, their absence masked by the ongoing commotion. They made their way to the military hangar, where Daphne's royal credentials granted them access to a sleek Yadrin transport. Vincent settled into the pilot's seat, his hands hovering over the unfamiliar controls. The craft hummed to life, responding to his touch with surprising sensitivity. As they lifted off, he kept the ship low, skimming the planet's surface to avoid detection. The Yadrin landscape blurred beneath them, a tapestry of iridescent vegetation and crystalline formations. Vincent's eyes remained fixed on the horizon, where the jagged peaks of the Kelder Range loomed. Suddenly, Zarek's voice cut through the tense silence. "Incoming. Loyalist fighters at R6. Vincent's instincts kicked in. He banked the ship hard, narrowly avoiding a barrage of energy bolts. The transport shuddered under the strain, but held together. "Daphne weapons," Vincent called out. She was already there, fingers dancing across the weapons console. Return fire erupted from their ship, forcing the Loyalist fighters to scatter. The aerial battle intensified as Vincent pushed the alien craft to its limits. He corkscrewed through the air, using maneuvers that would have torn apart a human ship. Daphne's aim was true, her royal military training evident in every precise shot. A Loyalist fighter exploded in a brilliant flash, temporarily blinding Vincent. As his vision cleared, he saw the mountain complex ahead, a fortress of gleaming metal embedded in the rock. "We're taking fire from the ground," Zarek shouted. Vincent gritted his teeth, pushing the ship into a steep dive. They weaved through a hail of anti-aircraft fire, the transport's hull absorbing several glancing blows. "I can't keep this up," Vincent warned. "We need to land." Daphne pointed to a narrow ledge jutting out from the mountainside. "There!" Vincent aimed for the precarious landing spot, fighting against the ship's failing systems. They hit hard, the transport's landing gear crumpling on impact. The team scrambled out as smoke began to billow from the engines. "So much for our exit strategy," Zarek muttered, eyeing the damaged ship. Vincent surveyed their surroundings, noting the treacherous terrain and the complex's fortified entrance above them. "We go in quiet," he said. "Use the rock formations for cover." They began their ascent, Vincent taking point. His human physiology proved unexpectedly advantageous as they encountered the first of the facility's security measures. A shimmering energy field blocked their path, but Vincent passed through undetected. "It's calibrated for Yadrin biosignatures," Zarek realized. Vincent found the field's power source and disabled it, allowing Daphne and Zarek to follow. They pressed on, encountering more obstacles that Vincent's alien nature allowed them to bypass. As they neared the central chamber, the distant hum of the superweapon grew louder. They rounded a corner and found themselves face to face with a group of Loyalist guards. Time seemed to slow as Vincent assessed the situation. He launched himself at the nearest guard, using the Yadrin's larger size against him. Daphne moved with fluid grace, her combat style a perfect complement to Vincent's. Together, they cleared the room, their movements so synchronized it was as if they could read each other's minds. Zarek provided covering fire, his shots precise and calculated. With the guards neutralized, they burst into the central chamber. The superweapon dominated the space, a massive construct of swirling energy and pulsing light. Loyalist technicians worked frantically at control panels, their eyes wide with surprise at the intruders. "Stop them!" a Loyalist commander shouted. "The weapon must fire." Vincent and Daphne sprang into action, engaging the Loyalists in close-quarters combat. The chamber erupted into chaos as energy bolts flew and bodies collided. Amidst the fray, a Loyalist technician managed to activate the firing sequence. The superweapon's hum deepened to a threatening growl. "Zarek," Vincent called out. "Shut it down." Zarek rushed to a control panel, his fingers flying over the alien interface. His face fell. "They've changed the codes. I can't override it." Daphne fought her way to Zarek's side, her expression determined. "Move aside," she ordered. "I know protocols only the royal family can access." As Daphne worked to disable the weapon, Vincent and Zarek formed a protective perimeter around her. More Loyalists poured into the chamber, forcing Vincent to improvise. He used consoles as cover, overturned equipment to create obstacles, and employed every trick he'd learned in his years of combat. "Almost there," Daphne called out, her voice strained. The superweapon's energy output spiked, the chamber filling with a blinding light. Vincent's heart raced as he realized they were out of time. "Daphne," he shouted. "Got it," she yelled back. The weapon's roar abruptly cut off, replaced by a series of ominous creaks and groans. The chamber shook violently, panels exploding from the walls. "It's destabilizing," Zarek warned. "We need to go. Now." They ran for the exit, debris raining down around them. Vincent's focus narrowed to the path ahead and the sound of Daphne's footsteps behind him. A massive section of ceiling broke free, plummeting towards Daphne. Vincent reacted without thinking, throwing himself at her. They tumbled to the ground as the debris crashed where she had been standing. Pain exploded through Vincent's leg as a jagged piece of metal struck him. He tried to stand, but his injured limb buckled beneath him. "Vincent!" Daphne cried out, rushing to his side. "Leave me," he gasped. "You have to get out." Daphne's eyes flashed with purpose. "Not a chance," she said, slinging his arm over her shoulder. With Zarek's help, they half-carried Vincent through the collapsing facility. They emerged into the harsh Yadrin sunlight just as the mountain complex imploded behind them. They stumbled to a stop, breathing heavily as they watched the dust settle. The superweapon was destroyed, but they were now stranded in the wilderness, their ship in ruins and no way to call for help. Daphne gently lowered Vincent to the ground, examining his injured leg. Her fingers brushed against his skin, sending a jolt through him that had nothing to do with pain. Their eyes met, a moment of shared vulnerability amidst the chaos. The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken emotions. Zarek cleared his throat, breaking the spell. "We should tend to that wound," he said. And then, "We have a long walk ahead of us." As Daphne began to treat Vincent's injury, he gazed out at the alien landscape stretching to the horizon. The capital was days away, if not weeks. And somewhere out there, Loyalist forces were no doubt regrouping. Their mission was not nearly finished. The future of Yada still hung in the balance. And as Vincent looked at Daphne, he realized that the fate of his heart might be at stake as well. Vincent gritted his teeth as he took his first steps away from the collapsed mountain complex. His injured leg throbbed with each movement, but he pushed through the pain. Daphne and Zarek flanked him, their eyes scanning the rugged terrain ahead. The Yadrin wilderness stretched before them, a tapestry of alien beauty and hidden dangers. Iridescent vegetation swayed in the breeze, casting shimmering patterns across the ground. In the distance, the jagged peaks of the Kelder Range pierced the sky. "We need to keep moving," Zarek urged, his voice low. "The Loyalists will send search parties soon." Daphne nodded, her face set with willpower. "The capital is days away, perhaps weeks. We'll have to be careful." They set off, Vincent leaning heavily on Daphne for support. The alien landscape seemed to shift and change with each step, presenting new challenges. Dense patches of bioluminescent fungi gave way to fields of razor-sharp crystal formations. Vincent's breath came in ragged gasps as they navigated a particularly steep incline. The atmosphere, he panted. It's different here. Daphne looked at him with concern. Yadin's air is thinner than Earth's. Your body will need time to adjust. As they pressed on, the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of deep purple and crimson. The temperature dropped rapidly, and strange chittering sounds echoed from the surrounding vegetation. There, Zarek pointed ahead, an abandoned outpost. We can shelter there for the night. The outpost was a squat, circular structure, its metallic surfaces dulled by time and the elements. As they approached, Vincent noticed intricate patterns etched into the walls, telling stories he couldn't decipher. Inside, the air was stale but mercifully still. Daphne immediately began searching the interior, her movements quick and purposeful. "Here," she called out, opening a hidden compartment. "Emergency supplies." Vincent sank to the floor, relief washing over him as Daphne tended to his wounded leg with a newly discovered medical kit. Her touch was gentle, yet he couldn't suppress a sharp intake of breath as she cleaned the gash. "Sorry," she murmured, her eyes meeting his. For a moment, the air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken tension. Zarek's voice broke the spell. "I'll take first watch. You two should rest." As night fell, Yadder's 3 moons rose, casting an eerie glow through the outpost's small windows. Vincent found himself unable to sleep, his senses on high alert in the alien environment. He limped to where Daphne stood by the window, her silhouette outlined in silvery light. "It's beautiful," he said softly, coming to stand beside her. Daphne turned to him, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Vincent, A violent tremor cut off her words, shaking the outpost to its foundations. Outside, a deafening roar split the night air. "Gorgolith!" Zarek shouted, scrambling for his weapon. The massive creature came into view, its armored hide glistening in the moonlight. Multiple eyes swiveled independently, scanning for prey. It let out another ear-splitting roar and charged the outpost. "Impossible!" Daphne gasped. "They're supposed to be extinct." Vincent's mind raced. "We need a plan. Daphne, what do you know about these things?" As Daphne quickly explained the Gorgolith's known weaknesses, Vincent's eyes darted around the outpost. He spotted a collection of old communication equipment in the corner. "Cover me," he ordered, limping towards a gear. While Daphne and Zarek fired energy bolts at the creature, Vincent cobbled together a makeshift sonic emitter. The Gorgolith's attacks grew more frenzied, its massive claws tearing chunks from the outpost walls. "Now or never," Vincent muttered, activating the device. A high-pitched whine filled the air. The Gorgolith reared back, thrashing its head in obvious distress. With a final, pained roar, it retreated into the night. Silence fell, broken only by their heavy breathing. Vincent leaned against the wall, exhausted but exhilarated. "Well," he said with a wry smile, "that's one way to liven up a night." As dawn broke, they set out again, their pace quickened by the night's events. The terrain grew more challenging, with dense jungles giving way to precarious mountain passes. Vincent pushed through his fatigue, driven by the urgency of their mission. Midday brought an unexpected encounter. A group of Yadrin nomads appeared on the horizon, mounted on large, reptilian creatures. Daphne stepped forward, her regal bearing unmistakable even in her travel-worn state. The nomads' initial wariness melted away as they recognized their princess. They bowed deeply, offering their mounts saurons, Daphne explained, to speed the group's journey. As they rode, Zarek shared grim news. "The hardliners are moving against you, princess. We must reach the capital quickly to secure your claim. Vincent felt Daphne tense behind him on their shared mount. He reached back, squeezing her hand reassuringly. She leaned into him, her breath warm on his neck. Their path took them through a region of ancient ruins. Massive stone structures rose from the earth, their surfaces covered in intricate carvings. Daphne's voice was filled with pride as she explained their significance to Vincent, each word deepening his fascination with her world. As they neared the capital's outskirts, an energy bolt sizzled past Vincent's head. Ambush! Zarak yellet! Loyalist soldiers poured from hidden positions, their weapons blazing. Vincent spurred their Sauron into action, guiding the beast through a maze of narrow canyons. Daphne clung to him, her body molded against his back as they weaved through the barrage. A stray shot struck near their mount's feet, causing it to rear. Vincent and Daphne were thrown clear, tumbling to the ground. As they regained their feet, Vincent realized with a sinking heart that Zarek was nowhere to be seen. "This way," Daphne hissed, pulling him towards a hidden cave entrance. They ducked inside just as another volley of energy bolts struck the cliff face. The cave was dark and close, the sounds of their pursuers echoing from outside. Vincent and Daphne pressed together in the narrow space, their hearts pounding in unison. "Vincent," Daphne whispered, her face mere inches from his. "If we don't make it—" He silenced her with a kiss, deep and passionate. For a moment, the world beyond ceased to exist. There was only this, only them. The moment shattered as voices approached the cave entrance. Vincent and Daphne broke apart, their eyes meeting in silent understanding. Whatever came next, they would face it together. As they prepared to confront their pursuers, Vincent's mind raced. They needed to find Zarek, evade capture, and somehow make it to the capital. The fate of Yad hung in the balance, and the next few moments would decide everything. Vincent tensed as the voices grew louder, his mind racing to find a way out. Daphne's eyes met his, filled with a mixture of fear and commitment. In that moment, an idea struck him. "The cave," he whispered urgently. "It might go deeper." Daphne nodded, understanding instantly. They began to move further into the darkness, Vincent's eyes adjusting more quickly than Daphne's. He took her hand, guiding her through the narrow passages. "This way," he murmured, feeling the ground slope downward. As they ventured deeper, the sounds of their pursuers faded. The air grew damp and cool, the walls slick with moisture. Vincent's feet splashed in shallow water, and a faint rushing sound reached his ears. "Do you hear that?" Daphne asked, her voice barely audible. "Water," Vincent confirmed. "An underground river, maybe." They pressed on, the sound growing louder. Soon, they emerged into a larger cavern, where a swift current cut through the rock. Vincent's mind raced, assessing their options. "We can use this," he said, scanning the area. "Help me gather some of those fallen stalactites and that driftwood." Working quickly and silently, they assembled a crude raft. Vincent tested its buoyancy, nodding with satisfaction. "It's not pretty, but it'll hold us." They climbed aboard, Vincent using a long piece of wood as a makeshift oar. The current caught them, carrying them swiftly through the cave system. Daphne clung to Vincent as they navigated treacherous rapids and narrowly avoided low-hanging formations. "Duck!" Vincent called out, pushing Daphne's head down just as a stalactite grazed the top of the raft. Their journey through the underground river was a harrowing test of reflexes and teamwork. Vincent's strong arms guided them through the worst of it, while Daphne's sharp eyes spotted dangers in the gloom. After what felt like hours, a glimmer of light appeared ahead. The river carried them out of the cave system and into the open air. They found themselves on the outskirts of a small settlement, the raft coming to rest on a pebbly shore. Vincent helped Daphne to her feet, both of them breathing heavily from their ordeal. They surveyed their surroundings cautiously, unsure of where they had emerged or who might be sympathetic to their cause. "We need to find out where we are," Daphne said, her eyes scanning the settlement. They approached the outskirts of the town, keeping to the shadows. As they neared the main square, they overheard a group of merchants discussing their upcoming journey to the capital. Daphne's eyes lit up. She turned to Vincent, speaking in a hushed tone. "If we can convince them to help us, we might have a way into the city." Vincent nodded, understanding the risk and potential reward. They waited until the merchants were alone. Then Daphne stepped forward, allowing herself to be seen. The effect was immediate. The merchants recognized their princess, falling to their knees in reverence. Daphne quickly explained their situation, appealing to their loyalty. "Your Highness," one of the merchants said, glancing around nervously, "we would be honored to assist you. We can conceal you among our trade goods." As they prepared for the journey, the merchants filled them in on the current state of affairs in the capital. Public opinion was divided, with many supporting Daphne's claim to the throne, while others remained loyal to her cousin. The journey to the capital was tense, Vincent and Daphne hidden beneath piles of fabric and spices. They used this time to strategize, discussing potential allies and ways to reclaim the throne. As they entered the city, Vincent's keen eyes spotted a familiar figure in the crowd. His heart leapt. "Daphne," he whispered urgently. "It's Zarek." Their companion had survived and made his way back to the capital. Once safely away from prying eyes, the trio reunited, embracing with relief. Zarek quickly brought them up to speed on the Loyalist forces' movements and the situation in the royal palace. Armed with this new intelligence, they began to formulate a plan. "The Festival of Lights," Daphne said suddenly. "It's in 3 days. We could use the celebration as cover to infiltrate the palace." Vincent's mind whirred with possibilities. What if we could get your message out to the people directly? Bypass the Loyalist-controlled media entirely? Zarek looked at him curiously. "How?" "Earth communication technology," Vincent explained. "If we can set up a transmitter, we could broadcast to the entire planet." The plan began to take shape. They would use the festival's chaos to their advantage, sneaking into the palace and setting up the transmitter. Daphne would address her people directly, rallying support for her claim to the throne. As they finalized the details, Vincent and Daphne found brief moments alone. The tension between them crackled, their recent intimate encounter in the cave fresh in their minds. They stole kisses in shadowed corners, both acutely aware of the obstacles their relationship faced. The night before the festival, the trio gathered in their hidden safe house. Maps of the palace were spread out before them, escape routes marked in red. "Tomorrow," Daphne said, her voice steady despite the weight of their task. "Tomorrow, we take back Yatter." Vincent met her gaze, seeing the perseverance in her eyes. He knew that whatever happened, their lives would never be the same after this night. As the first glimmers of dawn began to appear on the horizon, they made their final preparations, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the first rays of sunlight crept over the horizon, Vincent, Daphne, and Zarek emerged from their safe house, their senses heightened by the weight of their mission. The streets of the capital were already coming alive with the bustling preparations for the Festival of Lights. Colorful banners fluttered in the morning breeze, and the air was thick with the scent of exotic spices and the anticipation of celebration. Vendors set up stalls, their wares glinting in the early light. The trio moved through the growing crowds, their hearts pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. "Remember the plan?" Zarek murmured, his eyes scanning their surroundings. "We meet back here at sundown, no matter what happens." Vincent nodded, feeling the weight of the Earth communication device in his pack. Daphne squeezed his hand briefly, her touch sending a jolt through him. "Be careful," she whispered, her eyes searching his face. With a final shared glance, they parted ways, each heading towards their designated tasks. Vincent made his way towards the main communication tower, its sleek spire rising above the cityscape. He blended into the crowds of workers and revelers, his human features drawing curious glances but no undue attention. As he approached the tower, he noted the security measures with a practiced eye. Slipping into a service entrance, Vincent relied on his unique advantage, his human biosignature. The Yadran security systems, calibrated for their own species, failed to detect his presence. He moved swiftly through the building, his heart racing as he ascended to the upper levels. In a secluded control room, Vincent unpacked the Earth communication device. His fingers flew over the unfamiliar Yadran technology, integrating the human equipment with practiced efficiency. A soft hum filled the air as the device came to life, ready to broadcast Daphne's message across the planet. Meanwhile, Daphne wove through the festival crowds, her steps purposeful despite her elaborate disguise. She moved from one prearranged meeting point to another, revealing herself to key supporters with a flash of her royal circlet. In a shadowed alcove, she met with Admiral Thorin, an influential military leader known for his neutrality in the succession dispute. "Your Highness," Thorin breathed, his eyes widening as Daphne revealed her identity. "We feared you lost." "I returned to reclaim my rightful place," Daphne said, her voice low but filled with conviction. "Will you stand with me, Admiral?" Thorin hesitated, his gaze flicking to the bustling square beyond. "The situation is complex. Your cousin's supporters are deeply entrenched." Daphne leaned in, her eyes blazing with intensity. "I have a plan to expose the truth to all of Yadar, but I need your support to ensure a peaceful transition." As Daphne worked to sway key figures, Zarek employed his years of military training to infiltrate a loyalist stronghold. He moved like a shadow through the compound, his ears attuned to every whispered conversation. In a secluded office, Zarek discovered a trove of classified documents. His eyes widened as he scanned the contents, revealing a desperate plan to consolidate power and a list of figures still loyal to Daphne's cousin. He quickly committed the information to memory, knowing it could be crucial in the hours to come. As the festival reached its zenith, the central square was a sea of color and light. Thousands of Yadarans gathered, their faces turned expectantly towards the night sky, awaiting the traditional illumination ceremony. In the communication tower, Vincent's fingers hovered over the activation switch. He took a deep breath, knowing that once he flipped it, there would be no turning back. With a silent prayer, he engaged the Earth technology. The night sky above the square suddenly came alive with light, but not from the expected fireworks. Instead, Daphne's face appeared, projected on a scale never before seen on Yadar. The crowd gasped collectively, their eyes wide with wonder and confusion. Daphne's voice rang out, clear and strong, carried by the advanced human technology to every corner of the capital and beyond. "People of Yadar," she began, her words echoing across the stunned silence. "I am Princess Daphne, rightful heir to the throne. I come to you now to reveal a truth that has been hidden for too long." As Daphne laid bare the facts of her cousin's illegitimate rule and the off-world conspiracy, the crowd listened in rapt attention. She painted a vision of a prosperous Yadar, one that embraced cooperation with other species, particularly humans. "Together," she declared, her voice swelling with passion, "we can build a future brighter than any festival of lights. A future where Yadar stands proud among the stars, not in isolation, but in partnership with new allies and new friends." The square erupted in cheers, the sound washing over Vincent as he maintained the broadcast. But his moment of triumph was short-lived. Alarms blared through the tower as loyalist forces, realizing their impending defeat, launched a desperate attack. Vincent's military training kicked in as he engaged the first wave of attackers. He dodged energy bolts, using his understanding of Yadrin physiology to outmaneuver his opponents. But he was outnumbered, and the human technology behind him was vulnerable. Just as Vincent's situation seemed most dire, the door burst open. Daphne stood framed in the entrance, her royal circlet gleaming, a look of fierce dedication on her face. "Stand down," she commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. Some of the attacking soldiers hesitated, recognizing their princess. A tense standoff ensued, with Vincent and Daphne back to back, facing the remaining loyalists. The air crackled with tension, energy weapons humming ominously. Suddenly, a commotion arose from the stairwell. A group of Yadrin civilians, inspired by Daphne's broadcast, had fought their way up to defend their princess. The sight of Daphne standing alongside Vincent, a human ally, swayed more of the loyalist soldiers. Weapons clattered to the ground as they laid down their arms. As the situation in the tower stabilized, Zarek arrived with a contingent of military leaders now pledging their loyalty to Daphne. He presented the evidence of the loyalist plot, effectively neutralizing any remaining opposition. In the aftermath, Vincent and Daphne found themselves alone for a brief moment. Their eyes met, relief and exhilaration mingling in their gaze. Without a word, they embraced, the tension of the past hours dissolving in their shared warmth. As they parted, they became aware of the curious stares from the gathered Yadarins. Their closeness had not gone unnoticed, and already whispers were spreading about the nature of the relationship between the soon-to-be crowned queen and her human ally. Daphne straightened, her royal bearing returning as she addressed her supporters. "Prepare for the coronation," she instructed, her voice steady despite the emotions roiling within her. "It's time to begin a new era for Yadar." As the group dispersed to make preparations, Daphne turned to Vincent. "I want you by my side during the ceremony," she said softly. "You've earned a place of honor." Vincent nodded, acutely aware of the weight of this unprecedented invitation. As they made their way down the tower, the first light of a new day was breaking over Yadar, heralding the dawn of a new age and the beginning of a complex journey for Vincent and Daphne as they navigated the personal and political implications of their growing bond. Relationship as they navigated the personal and political implications of their growing bond. The days following the coup were a whirlwind of activity. As Daphne reclaimed her rightful place as heir to the throne, the capital city of Yada buzzed with excitement and tension. Vincent found himself thrust into an unexpected spotlight, his role in restoring Daphne to power, capturing the fascination of the Yadarin public. Walking through the ornate corridors of the royal palace, Vincent couldn't help but notice the curious glances and whispered conversations that followed in his wake. Some Yadarins looked at him with open admiration, while others regarded him with barely concealed suspicion. "I never thought I'd see the day when a human would walk these halls as an honored guest," remarked a passing courtier, his multifaceted eyes gleaming with interest. Vincent nodded politely, still adjusting to his new status. He made his way to the grand celestial amphitheater, where the coronation ceremony was to take place. The ancient structure was a marvel of Yadrin engineering, its sweeping arches and crystalline surfaces designed to amplify the planet's unique gravitational harmonics during important events. As he entered the amphitheater, Vincent was struck by the flurry of activity. Yadarin workers scurried about, hanging elaborate decorations and adjusting sophisticated equipment. He approached a group of security personnel, who turned to him expectantly. "We need to integrate our human security measures with your traditional protocols," Vincent explained, gesturing to the Earth-made devices he had brought. "It's crucial we find a balance that respects Yadarin customs while ensuring maximum protection." The lead Yadarin security officer, a tall, lithe figure named Kira, nodded in agreement. "We welcome your expertise, Vincent. However, not everyone shares our enthusiasm for off-world influence." As if on cue, a booming voice echoed through the amphitheater. "This is an outrage. Our most sacred rituals, tainted by alien technology." Vincent turned to see High Counselor Vextor striding towards him, his ornate robes billowing behind him. The counselor's face was contorted with terrifying anger. "High Counselor," Vincent said, keeping his voice level, "I assure you, we're taking every precaution to respect Yadrin traditions." Vextor's eyes narrowed. "Your very presence here is an affront to our customs. The coronation of our queen should be a purely Yadrin affair." Before Vincent could respond, Daphne's voice cut through the tension. "High Counselor, I trust you're not questioning my decision to have Vincent oversee our security arrangements?" All eyes turned to see Daphne approaching, her regal bearing a stark contrast to the chaos of the preparations around her. Vextor bowed stiffly. "Of course not, Your Highness. I merely express concern about straying too far from our time-honored ways." Daphne's gaze softened slightly. "Your concern is noted, Counselor, but Yadder's future lies in embracing new alliances, not clinging to isolation. Vincent's presence here is a symbol of that future." As Vextor retreated, muttering under his breath, Vincent couldn't help but admire Daphne's poise. Yet he noticed the slight tremor in her hands, the tightness around her eyes that betrayed the immense pressure she was under. Later that evening, as they walked through the palace gardens, Daphne's carefully maintained composure began to crack. "There's so much to do, so many factions to appease," she confided, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm truly ready for this." Vincent reached out, gently taking her hand. "You were born for this, Daphne, and you won't face it alone." Their eyes met, a moment of shared vulnerability passing between them. But before either could speak further, a loud crash echoed from nearby, followed by shouts of alarm. They rushed toward the sound, finding a scene of chaos. A large section of decorative stonework had collapsed, narrowly missing a group of workers. As Vincent surveyed the damage, his military instincts kicked in. This was no accident. Over the next few days, a series of mysterious mishaps plagued the coronation preparations. Equipment malfunctions, structural issues in the amphitheater, even sudden illnesses among key personnel. Each incident on its own could be explained away, but together they formed a troubling pattern. Vincent launched a covert investigation, working late into the night to connect the dots. His inquiries led him to uncover whispers of a hidden faction, loyalists still faithful to Daphne's deposed cousin. They called themselves the Shadows of Yadda, and their goal was clear: disrupt the coronation and plunge the planet into chaos. Realizing the gravity of the threat, Vincent enlisted Xerx's help to implement a complex security plan. They assembled a team of trusted Yadrin soldiers and human specialists who had arrived as part of a diplomatic mission. This mixed group represented a new era of cooperation, but also faced its own internal conflicts and mistrust. "Remember," Vincent addressed the team, "we're not just protecting individuals here. We're safeguarding the future of human-Yadrin relations. Stay alert, trust your instincts, and watch each other's backs." As the coronation day drew near, the pressure mounted. Vincent found himself constantly on edge, scrutinizing every face for signs of betrayal. The revelation that a high-level conspirator might be lurking within Daphne's inner circle only added to his anxiety. The night before the ceremony, Vincent's team intercepted a crucial communication. The Shadows of Yadda planned to strike during the coronation itself. But the message also hinted at something more troubling: a traitor in their midst, someone close to Daphne. As dawn broke on the day of the coronation, Vincent took his position near Daphne in the celestial amphitheater. Thousands of Yadrins filled the stands, their anticipation palpable. The ancient structure hummed with gravitational energy, the very air seeming to vibrate with the weight of the moment. Daphne stood tall, her royal regalia glinting in the light. But as the crown was about to be placed on her head, Vincent's eyes scanned the crowd, every muscle tense. He knew that at any moment, the Shadows of Yadda could make their move. And somewhere in this vast amphitheater, a traitor was waiting to strike. Strike. And somewhere in this vast amphitheater, a traitor was waiting to make their move. The air in the celestial amphitheater thrummed with tension as the coronation ceremony began. Vincent's boots vibrated subtly against the floor, the unique gravitational harmonics of the ancient structure adding to his heightened state of alertness. His eyes scanned the sea of faces, searching for any sign of the shadows of Yadu or their mysterious traitor. Daphne approached the ancient throne, her traditional Yadaran royal attire shimmering in the amphitheater's ethereal light. The assembled crowd fell silent as the high priestess of Yadu stepped forward to begin the sacred rites. Vincent noticed Daphne's hand trembling slightly as she reached for the ceremonial scepter, a testament to the immense pressure weighing upon her. Suddenly, a series of thunderous explosions shook the outer perimeter of the amphitheater. Panic erupted as acrid smoke billowed into the sacred space. Vincent's training kicked in instantly, and he barked orders into his communicator, coordinating the mixed team of human and Yadaran security forces. Secure the princess. Containment teams to the north and east quadrants. Vincent shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. As he fought his way through the surging crowd towards Daphne, Vincent spotted several cloaked figures moving against the flow of panicking attendees. Their purposeful movements stood out amid the chaos. Zarek, Vincent called into his communicator. Possible shadow operatives at your 2 o'clock. Intercept and detain. Vincent finally reached Daphne's side, his heart pounding. She stood firm, her eyes darting around the amphitheater, assessing the situation. Before Vincent could speak, High Counselor Vextor materialized beside them, his ornate robe swirling around him. Your Highness, Vextor said urgently, we must get you to safety immediately. Allow me to escort you. Vincent's instincts flared. The suspicion of a traitor in Daphne's inner circle loomed large in his mind. He stepped between Daphne and the High Counselor, his hand hovering near his weapon. With all due respect, Counselor, Vincent said, his voice low and firm, I'll be personally guarding the princess. Vextor's eyes narrowed, his face contorting with scarcely controlled fury. How dare you, alien? This is a matter for Yadaran security, not some off-world interloper. The tension between them crackled like electricity. Daphne's voice cut through their standoff. Vincent will accompany me, Counselor. Your concern is noted, but I trust him with my life. Vextor's face fell, a mixture of shock and anger flashing across his features. Without another word, he turned and disappeared into the roiling crowd. Vincent led Daphne through the chaos, dodging panicked nobles and debris from the explosions. They made their way to a small antechamber off the main hall, sealing the door behind them. In the sudden quiet of the chamber, Vincent and Daphne found themselves face to face, mere inches apart. The adrenaline of the moment, combined with the pent-up tension of the past weeks, surged between them. Without a word, they came together in a passionate embrace, their lips meeting with an intensity that surprised them both. For a brief, electric moment, all thoughts of political implications and impending danger melted away. But their respite was short-lived. A strange, low-frequency hum penetrated the walls of the antechamber, instantly putting Vincent on high alert. That sound, he said, breaking away from Daphne. I've heard it before. It's similar to the Yadaran superweapon we encountered. Daphne's eyes widened in recognition. If the shadows had brought such a device into the amphitheater, the consequences could be catastrophic. The gravitational harmonics here could amplify its effects, potentially destabilizing our planet's entire ecosystem. As they spoke, Vincent noticed a faint glow emanating from Daphne's royal circlet. The ancient artifact seemed to be resonating with the energy signature of the hidden device. Your circlet, Vincent said, pointing to the glowing jewel. It's reacting to the weapon's energy. We might be able to use it to track down the device. Daphne nodded, her face set with perseverance. Then we have no choice. We must find and disarm it ourselves. If there's truly a traitor among us, we can't risk alerting them by involving the security team. Together, they slipped out of the antechamber and made their way towards the lower levels of the amphitheater. The circlet's glow intensified as they descended, guiding them through a labyrinth of ancient corridors and chambers. As they navigated the maze-like structure, Vincent couldn't help but be acutely aware of Daphne's presence beside him. The memory of their kiss lingered, adding a layer of tension to their already precarious situation. After what felt like hours of searching, they found themselves standing before a massive, sealed door deep beneath the amphitheater. The circlet pulsed with energy, leaving no doubt that their quarry lay just beyond. Vincent and Daphne exchanged a look of dogged purpose. The fate of Yatter rested in their hands as they prepared to confront whatever waited on the other side of that ancient barrier. Unbeknownst to them, Zarek had noticed their absence and was now following their trail, torn between his duty to protect the princess and his growing loyalty to Vincent. As he descended into the depths of the amphitheater, the low hum of the hidden weapon grew stronger, guiding him towards an inevitable confrontation. The vibrations beneath their feet intensified as they approached the massive door, its ancient surface etched with intricate Yatteran symbols. Vincent placed his hand on the cool metal, feeling the subtle resonance of the weapon beyond. He exchanged a determined look with Daphne, then nodded. Together, they pushed the heavy door open, revealing a cavernous chamber bathed in an eerie, pulsating light. At the center of the room stood a compact device, its sleek design a stark contrast to the ancient architecture surrounding it. The weapon's core glowed with an otherworldly energy, sending waves of distortion through the air. Surrounding it were 5 shadow operatives, their dark cloaks billowing in the artificial gravity field. Vincent's military training kicked in instantly. He assessed the guards' positions, noting their tense postures and the unfamiliar weapons at their sides. Daphne's eyes darted around the room, her Yatteran instincts picking up on details Vincent might have missed. Without a word, they launched into action. Vincent moved with fluid grace, his earth-honed combat techniques catching the first guard completely off guard. A swift strike to the solar plexus sent the operative crumpling to the ground. Daphne was a blur of motion, her agility heightened by years of rigorous royal training. She ducked under a guard's wild swing, using the momentum to flip him over her shoulder. The guard landed hard, the impact amplified by the fluctuating gravity. As Vincent grappled with another operative, he caught glimpses of Daphne's fluid movements. They moved in perfect synchronization, anticipating each other's actions as if they'd fought side by side for years. The growing bond between them manifested in their seamless teamwork, each covering the other's blind spots without hesitation. Suddenly, a sharp cry rang out. One of the operatives had broken free from the melee and reached the weapon's control panel. With a triumphant snarl, he slammed his hand down on a glowing button. The chamber shuddered violently. The weapon's core flared to life, its energy output spiking dramatically. Objects around the room began to lift off the ground as the device manipulated the local gravitational field. Vincent fought against the shifting gravity, making his way to the weapon. He recognized components similar to Earth technology, mixed with distinctly alien elements. This hybrid design confirmed his suspicions of an external influence seeking to destabilize Yatter. As he worked to disable the device, Vincent's human perspective allowed him to spot vulnerabilities a Yatteran might overlook. He called out to Daphne, the power coupling. It's not fully integrated with the Yatteran tech. Daphne fended off the last standing guard, her movements graceful despite the chaotic gravitational shifts. "Can you shut it down?" she shouted over the weapon's intensifying hum. Vincent's fingers flew over the control panel, searching for a way to disrupt the power flow. Suddenly, Daphne's royal circlet began to glow brightly, resonating with the weapon's energy signature. Acting on instinct, she reached out and touched the device. To Vincent's amazement, the circlet seemed to interfere with the weapon's operation. The pulsing energy faltered, its rhythm disrupted by the ancient artifact's influence. This unexpected development hinted at hidden properties within the Yadrin relic, its true nature a mystery to both humans and modern Yadrins alike. As they struggled to neutralize the threat, the chamber door burst open. Zarek rushed in, his eyes wide with a mixture of relief and confusion. "Vincent, Your Highness, what in the name of the ancients is happening here?" Before either could respond, the weapon's influence intensified. Gravity fluctuated wildly, sending all three of them tumbling through the air. They grasped at floating debris, struggling to maintain their positions as they worked to disable the device. Vincent identified a critical component, a pulsing crystal that seemed to be the linchpin of the weapon's operation. "If we remove that, it should shut down," he called out. "But this gravity field makes it nearly impossible to reach." Daphne's eyes narrowed with purpose. "I can do it. Yadrins are naturally more adapted to gravitational changes." Before Vincent could protest, Daphne launched herself towards the weapon. She navigated the chaotic gravitational currents with incredible precision, her body twisting and turning to avoid debris. As she neared the crystal, the weapon's effects intensified. Vincent watched in horror as Daphne was caught in a particularly strong gravitation eddy. Without thinking, he pushed off from his position, reaching out to her. Their hands clasped together, fingers intertwining. In that moment of connection, Daphne's circlet emitted a brilliant pulse of energy. The gravitational field stabilized for a brief instant, allowing Daphne to stretch out her free hand and grasp the crystal. With a sharp tug, she wrenched the component free. The weapon's hum died away, and normal gravity reasserted itself. Vincent, Daphne, and Zarek dropped to the ground, panting heavily. As they caught their breath, the implications of the discovery began to sink in. The hybrid technology, the unknown properties of Daphne's circlet, and the lingering question of who was truly behind this attack, all pointed to a deeper conspiracy than they had initially suspected. Vincent helped Daphne to her feet, their hands lingering together for a moment longer than necessary. Zarek watched this interaction with a raised eyebrow, but said nothing. "We need to secure this device and the operatives," Vincent said, his mind already racing ahead to their next move. "But the real mastermind is still out there." Daphne's eyes hardened. "Vextor," she said, her voice low. His behavior earlier, and now his convenient disappearance. Zarek nodded grimly. "It fits. But we'll need solid proof to accuse a high counselor of treason." As they began to formulate a plan, Vincent couldn't help but notice the way Daphne's hand kept brushing against his. The adrenaline of their shared ordeal, combined with the growing trust between them, created an almost palpable tension. They gathered the unconscious operatives and disabled weapon components, preparing to return to the main amphitheater. As they made their way through the twisting corridors, Vincent and Daphne found themselves walking side by side, slightly apart from Zarek. In a moment of relative privacy, their eyes met. The unspoken attraction between them surged to the surface, fueled by the intensity of their recent experience. Without a word, they came together in a passionate embrace, their lips meeting with an urgency that surprised them both. The kiss lasted only seconds before the sound of approaching footsteps forced them apart. Reality came crashing back. The undetermination threat, the interrupted coronation, and the complex political landscape they still had to navigate. Compose. Navigate. The unspoken attraction between them surged, but duty called. With a shared look of understanding, Vincent and Daphne refocused on the task at hand. As they emerged from the underground chambers, the trio was met with a cacophony of voices and a sea of concerned faces. The celestial amphitheater, once a picture of order and ceremony, now buzzed with confusion and fear. Vincent's keen eyes scanned the crowd, noting the mix of relief and suspicion on the faces of the gathered Yadrin nobles. Security forces moved swiftly, securing the perimeter and ushering the most agitated attendees to calmer areas. Daphne stepped forward, her regal bearing instantly commanding attention. "My fellow Yatterans," she began, her voice clear and strong, "we have neutralized an immediate threat, but our work is not yet complete." Vincent and Zarek flanked her, presenting a united front. Vincent spoke next, his words carefully chosen. "The device we encounter requires further study. Its implications for Yatter security are significant." As he spoke, Vincent observed the reactions of the assembled crowd. Most showed genuine concern, but a few faces stood out. High Counselor Vextor, in particular, seemed to lean in with unusual interest. Zarek, catching Vincent's subtle nod, began to move through the crowd. His movements were casual, but his eyes never left Vextor. Daphne, meanwhile, ascended the steps to the coronation dais. The High Priestess, her elaborate robe slightly disheveled from the earlier chaos, resumed her position. With a nod from Daphne, the sacred rites began anew. As the ceremony progressed, Vincent maneuvered through the crowd, his earth-honed reflexes allowing him to slip between nobles with ease. He drew closer to Vextor, who had positioned himself near an ornate pillar. The counselor's hand moved to his robe, retrieving a small device. Vincent's trained ear picked up fragments of an encoded transmission. Unstable. Human interference. Contingency. Vincent's suspicions crystallized into certainty. He caught Zarek's eye across the room and gave a subtle signal. The Yatteran bodyguard began to close in. Vextor's eyes darted around the room, a hint of panic crossing his face as he realized the net was tightening. In a swift motion, he activated a hidden device on his wrist. The effect was immediate and disorienting. The amphitheater's artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Attendees cried out in shock as they began to float upwards, their ornate robes billowing around them. Vincent, his space combat training kicking in, quickly adjusted to the zero-gravity environment. He pushed off from a nearby column, propelling himself towards Vextor. The traitor, however, was making a beeline for Daphne. His intentions were clear. The soon-to-be queen would make a valuable hostage. Vincent's mind raced, calculating trajectories and force vectors. With a powerful kick off a floating piece of debris, he launched himself across the chamber. His body twisted in midair, narrowly avoiding collisions with panicked nobles. Vextor's fingers were mere inches from Daphne's arm when Vincent slammed into him. The impact sent them both spinning through the air, grappling for control. "You fool!" Vextor snarled, his facade of loyalty finally dropping. "You have no idea what forces you're interfering with." Vincent didn't waste breath on a reply. He focused on subduing Vextor, using techniques honed in Earth's orbital defense programs. In zero gravity, every action had an equal and opposite reaction, and Vincent used this to his advantage. Daphne, showcasing her own combat prowess, pushed off from the coronation dais. She twisted gracefully through the air, her ceremonial robe streaming behind her like a comet's tail. As Vincent and Vextor traded blows, their erratic movements carrying them across the chamber, Daphne positioned herself in their path. With perfect timing, she reached out, grasping Vextor's arm and using his momentum to spin him away from Vincent. The coordinated attack caught Vextor off guard. He flailed, trying to regain his bearings in the chaotic zero-gravity environment. Vincent seized the opportunity. With a powerful thrust, he closed the distance and locked Vextor in a restraining hold. The counselor struggled, but Vincent's grip was unyielding. "It's over, Vextor," Vincent said, his voice low, but carrying in the strange acoustics of the gravity-less chamber. "Your plot has failed." Vextor's eyes blazed with fury and fear. "You understand nothing," he spat. "The off-worlders promised us power beyond your imagination. Yatter could have ruled the sector." His words, carried by the amphitheater's acoustics, reached the ears of many floating nobles. Gasps and murmurs of shock rippled through the suspended crowd. Zarek, having made his way to the gravity control systems, managed to deactivate Vextor's device. Slowly, agonizingly, the chamber's normal gravity reasserted itself. Nobles, guards, and debris all began to descend. As feet touched the ground once more, the full impact of Vextor's confession sank in. The assembled Yatterans looked at the restrained counselor with a mixture of disgust and disbelief. Daphne, her ceremonial robe slightly askew, but her bearing no less regal, addressed the crowd. "My fellow Yatterans," she began, her voice strong and clear, "today we have witnessed both treachery and heroism. Let this be a lesson in the importance of unity and the strength we can find in diversity." She gestured to Vincent, who stood tall despite the exertion of the recent fight. "This human, Vincent, has proven himself a true friend to Yatter. His actions today have saved not just my life, but potentially the future of our planet." The coronation ceremony resumed, but with a palpable difference in the air. As the high priestess placed a crown upon Daphne's head, the assembled Yatterans watched with a new perspective. The presence of Vincent, a human, at this most sacred of Yatteran rituals no longer seemed like an intrusion, but a symbol of a new era. As Queen Daphne turned to face her people, her eyes met Vincent's. In that moment, despite the crowd surrounding them, it felt as if they were alone. The connection between them, forged in the heat of battle and tempered by shared purpose, had grown into something neither had anticipated. But as the cheers of the crowd washed over them, both Vincent and Daphne knew that their path forward would not be easy. The exposure of Vextor's plot had shaken Yatteran society to its core. Questions about off-world influences and the true extent of the conspiracy would need to be answered. As the newly crowned Queen of Yatta began to address the complex political landscape that lay before them, Vincent stood ready. Whatever challenges they would face, he knew they would face them together. As the cheers of the crowd subsided, Vincent found himself thrust into a whirlwind of activity. The days following Queen Daphne's coronation were a blur of meetings, debriefings, and public appearances. His actions during the coup attempt had catapulted him into the spotlight, and he now found himself in the unexpected role of unofficial human ambassador to Yatter. Vincent stood before a mirror in his newly assigned quarters, adjusting the collar of his formal Earth uniform. The Yatteran sun cast a warm glow through the ornate windows, illuminating the blend of human and alien decor that now filled the room. As he prepared for yet another diplomatic function, he couldn't help but reflect on the rapid changes in his life. A chime at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," he called out, turning to face his visitor. Zarek strode in, his posture as impeccable as ever. "The Earth delegation has arrived," he announced, his tone neutral, but his eyes betraying a hint of curiosity. "Ambassador Elena Frost requests your presence in the reception hall." Vincent nodded, taking a deep breath to center himself. "Thank you, Zarek. I'll be there shortly." As they walked through the palace corridors, Vincent noticed a mix of reactions from the Yatteran staff and nobles they passed. Some offered warm smiles and respectful nods, while others watched him with thinly veiled suspicion. The coup attempt had shaken Yatteran society to its core, and Vincent knew his presence was a constant reminder of those events. They entered the reception hall, a grand space where the vaulted ceilings seemed to capture and amplify every whisper. At the center stood a woman Vincent recognized immediately from briefings, Ambassador Elena Frost. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her sharp eyes scanned the room with practiced efficiency. As Vincent approached, Frost turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "Ah, Mr. Harker," she said, her voice crisp and authoritative. "I've been looking forward to meeting you. Your actions have caused quite a stir back on Earth." Vincent inclined his head respectfully. "Ambassador Frost, it's an honor. I hope I can be of assistance during your visit." Frost's lips curved into a slight smile. "Oh, I'm counting on it, Mr. Harker. Your unique position gives you insights that could be invaluable to our negotiations with Yatter." Before Vincent could respond, a hush fell over the room. Queen Daphne entered, her regal bearing drawing all eyes to her. She wore a gown that seamlessly blended traditional Yadrin design with more modern elements, a visual representation of the changes she was implementing in her government. Daphne approached Vincent and Ambassador Frost, her smile warm but her eyes alert. "Ambassador, welcome to Yadr. I trust your journey was pleasant?" As the two women exchanged pleasantries, Vincent found his gaze drawn to Daphne. Their eyes met briefly, and he felt a familiar surge of connection. But the moment passed quickly as Daphne turned to address the assembled dignitaries. "Esteemed guests," Daphne began, her voice carrying easily through the hall, "today marks a new chapter in Yadrin history. We stand at the threshold of greater cooperation with Earth and other off-world allies. To that end, I am establishing a new advisory council to guide us through these changing times." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Vincent saw a mix of excitement and apprehension on the faces around him. Daphne continued, "This council will include both traditional nobles and progressive thinkers open to off-world cooperation." She paused, her eyes finding Vincent once more. "And I am pleased to announce that Vincent Harker has agreed to join this council, bringing his unique perspective to our deliberations." The announcement sent a shockwave through the room. Vincent felt the weight of dozens of stares upon him, some approving, others less so. He maintained his composure, but his mind raced with the implications of this new role. As the reception continued, Vincent found himself pulled into multiple conversations, fielding questions about Earth, his experiences on Yadr, and his thoughts on interplanetary relations. Through it all, he was acutely aware of Daphne's presence, stealing glances whenever he could. Later, as the event wound down, Vincent found a moment of relative privacy near one of the hall's massive windows. He gazed out at the Yadrin capital, its alien architecture bathed in the light of the setting sun. "Quite a view, isn't it?" Daphne's voice came from behind him, soft but clear. Vincent turned, his heart quickening at her proximity. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice low. "It's beautiful." Daphne moved to stand beside him, their shoulders nearly touching. "Vincent," she said, dropping the formality, "I hope you don't mind that I announce your position on the council without discussing it with you first. I know it's a lot to ask." "No, I'm honored," Vincent replied quickly. "I want to help however I can." Daphne's hand brushed against his, the contact sending a jolt through him. "I'm glad," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have challenging times ahead, and I value your support." For a moment, they stood in silence, the unspoken tension between them palpable. Vincent was acutely aware of every breath, every subtle movement. He wanted to pull her close, to act on the growing attraction between them, but he knew the risks were too great. The sound of approaching footsteps broke the spell. They stepped apart, composing themselves as Ambassador Frost approached. "Your Majesty, Mr. Harker," Frost said, her tone businesslike. "I believe we have much to discuss regarding the upcoming cultural exchange and the arrival of our scientific team." As they moved to join the ambassador, Vincent caught Daphne's eye once more. The look they shared spoke volumes, of duty, of desire, and of the complex path that lay ahead. Whatever challenges they would face, Vincent knew that his feelings for Daphne and hers for him would only complicate matters further. As the days passed, Vincent found himself increasingly caught between his growing feelings for Daphne and the weighty responsibilities of his new position. The cultural exchange event loomed on the horizon, promising to be a pivotal moment in Earth-Yad relations. On the morning of the event, Vincent stood in the Celestial Amphitheater, overseeing the final security preparations. He watched as human and Yadrin security teams worked in tandem, their movements a testament to the bridges being built between their worlds. Sensor placement complete in sectors A through D, a young Yadrin technician reported, her eyes darting nervously between Vincent and her datapad. Vincent nodded, his gaze sweeping the vast expanse of the amphitheater. Good. Let's run a final check on the gravitational anomaly detectors. As the team dispersed to their assigned positions, Vincent felt a familiar presence at his side. Queen Daphne approached, her traditional regalia casting a kaleidoscope of colors in the amphitheater's unique lighting. "Everything in order?" she asked, her voice low and tinged with concern. Vincent turned to face her, momentarily struck by her regal beauty. "As ready as we can be. The sensor net is in place, and security teams are on high alert." Daphne nodded, her eyes scanning the bustling activity around them. "I can't shake the feeling that we're missing something, Vincent. The intel on this potential sabotage attempt is frustratingly vague." "I know," Vincent replied, unconsciously stepping closer to her. "But we've prepared for every scenario we could think of. We'll be ready." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the chaos around them faded away. Daphne reached out, her hand barely brushing Vincent's arm. "I'm glad you're here," she said softly. Before Vincent could respond, Ambassador Frost's voice cut through the air. "Your Majesty, Mr. Harker, the first guests are arriving." They stepped apart, the moment broken. As Daphne moved to greet the early arrivals, Vincent returned his focus to the security operations. The amphitheater slowly filled with a mix of human and Yadran dignitaries, their excited chatter echoing through the space. As Queen Daphne took the stage to deliver her opening speech, Vincent positioned himself near the main control panel, his eyes constantly scanning the crowd. The Queen's words resonated through the amphitheater, emphasizing unity and cooperation. "Today, we stand at the dawn of a new era," Daphne proclaimed, her voice strong and clear. "An era where the people of Earth and Yada join hands in friendship and mutual understanding." As the cultural performances began, Vincent noticed subtle movements in the crowd that set his instincts on edge. He tapped his comm unit, alerting his team to be on high alert. Midway through a mesmerizing display of Yadran anti-gravity dance, Vincent's worst fears were realized. A soft beep from his wrist device signaled a gravitational anomaly near the amphitheater's power core. With a swift, practiced movement, Vincent activated his comm link. "Alpha Team, we have a situation at the power core. Move in, but keep it quiet." He caught Daphne's eye across the amphitheater and gave a subtle nod. She acknowledged with the barest tilt of her head, seamlessly continuing her role as host while Vincent slipped away from the main hall. Vincent led his team to the labyrinthine corridors beneath the amphitheater, the distant sounds of the performances above growing fainter with each step. As they approached the power core, the faint hum of machinery gave way to the sound of hurried voices and the unmistakable whine of energy weapons powering up. "Hold position," Vincent whispered, signaling his team to take cover. He peered around a corner, assessing the situation. A group of figures huddled around a device that pulsed with an otherworldly energy, its design a twisted fusion of Yadran and off-world technology. Vincent's mind raced, formulating a plan. He signaled his team to spread out, preparing for a pincer movement. Just as he was about to give the order to move in, one of the conspirators looked up, locking eyes with him. In an instant, the corridor erupted into chaos. Energy bolts sizzled through the air as Vincent and his team engaged the saboteurs. The close quarters made the fight intense and personal, with every missed shot threatening to damage the amphitheater's vital systems. Vincent ducked under a wild swing from a burly Yadran, using the attacker's momentum to throw him into a control panel. Sparks flew as the panel shorted out, causing the lights in the corridor to flicker ominously. Above, in the amphitheater proper, Queen Daphne felt the subtle shift in gravity that signaled the activation of the conspirator's device. She maintained her composure, smoothly transitioning the event into a planned intermission. "Ambassador Frost," Daphne said, her voice betraying none of the tension she felt, "I believe now would be an excellent time for you to share your thoughts on the cultural exchange thus far." As Frost took center stage, buying precious time, Daphne discreetly monitored the situation below through a hidden comm link. Back in the depths of the amphitheater, Vincent realized the gravity of their situation. The saboteur's device was more powerful than anticipated, its effects already beginning to ripple through the structure. "We need to shut it down now," he shouted over the din of battle. "Cover me!" As his team laid down suppressing fire, Vincent charged towards the device. He dodged energy bolts and flying debris, his focus narrowed to the pulsing heart of the alien machine. Reaching the device, Vincent's hands flew over its surface, his mind racing to understand its workings. He realized with growing dread that simply shutting it off wasn't an option. Its effects on the local gravitational field were too severe. In a moment of desperate inspiration, Vincent began to rewire the device, integrating components from his own equipment. His fingers moved with practiced precision, guided by an intuitive understanding of both human and Yadrin technology. "Everyone, clear the area," Vincent shouted as he made the final connections. He activated his makeshift countermeasure, bracing himself for the unknown. A wave of energy pulsed outward, momentarily plunging the entire amphitheater into darkness. In the main hall, Queen Daphne's voice rang out, calm and assured. "And now, esteemed guests, prepare yourselves for a truly unique experience, a journey through the very fabric of space-time itself." As the lights flickered back to life, Vincent sagged against the deactivated device, exhaustion and relief washing over him. The immediate threat had been neutralized, but as alarms began to blare throughout the structure, he realized their troubles were just getting started. The ancient systems of the celestial amphitheater, awakened by the gravitational disturbance, were stirring to life. Vincent's comm unit crackled with urgent reports from across the planet. Similar awakenings were occurring at other Yadrin sites. As Vincent raced back to the main hall, his mind whirled with the implications of what they had unleashed. He found Daphne expertly managing the departure of the last guests, her calm exterior masking the urgency of the situation. Their eyes met across the emptying amphitheater, a world of unspoken words passing between them. As the final dignitaries departed, Vincent and Daphne found themselves alone in the vast, humming space. The tension that had been building between them finally broke. They came together in a fierce embrace, their lips meeting with an intensity born of shared danger and pent-up desire. For a brief, electric moment, the world fell away, leaving only the two of them. The spell was broken by the sound of running footsteps. They separated just as Zarek burst into the hall, his usually impeccable appearance disheveled. "Your Majesty, Vincent," he panted. "We have a situation. The ancient systems, they're activating all across Yadr. We're receiving reports of gravitational anomalies from every major city." Daphne and Vincent exchanged a look of unwavering tenacity. The crisis they had averted in the amphitheater was merely the beginning of a much larger threat. "Gather the council," Daphne ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. "And contact Ambassador Frost. We'll need Earth's help to understand what we've awakened." As they moved to leave the amphitheater, Vincent paused, his hand on the ornate control panel that had started it all. The structure thrummed with newfound energy, its secrets only beginning to reveal themselves. "What have we done?" he murmured, the weight of their actions settling on his shoulders. Daphne's hand found his, her touch grounding him in the moment. "What we had to," she replied softly. "Now, we face the consequences together." With a shared nod of persistence, they strode out of the celestial amphitheater, ready to confront the awakening power of Yada's ancient past and the uncertain future it heralded. The moment between Vincent and Daphne lingered as they exited the celestial amphitheater, their hands still intertwined. The gravity of the situation settled upon them as they stepped into a world transformed by the awakening of ancient Yadrin technology. Zarek's voice crackled over the comm system, urgency evident in his tone. "Your Majesty, Vincent, We're receiving reports of gravitational anomalies from every major city on Yatter. The situation is escalating rapidly. Vincent's military instincts kicked in. We need a command center. The amphitheater's central location and advanced systems make it ideal. Daphne nodded, her regal bearing masking the turmoil within. Agreed. Zarek, summon the Council and contact Ambassador Frost. We'll need Earth's full support. As they re-entered the amphitheater, the space hummed with newfound energy. Vincent immediately began organizing the command center, repurposing the main hall into a hub of activity. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing real-time data from across the planet. We need eyes on the ground, Vincent said, his fingers flying over a control panel. I'm organizing reconnaissance teams, a mix of human scientists and Yatteran experts. We need to understand what we're dealing with. Daphne stood at the center of the hall, her voice carrying authority as she addressed the gathered officials. Our priority is the safety of our people. We must manage this crisis while maintaining calm. As the teams deployed, reports began flooding in. Coastal cities reported erratic tides, while inland areas experienced sudden sinkholes and floating debris. The planet's very fabric seemed to be unraveling. Dr. Alara Warren, a human scientist, approached Vincent with a holographic display. Mr. Harker, we're detecting a pattern. These activated structures, they're forming a network across the planet, with the amphitheater at its center. Vincent's brow furrowed as he studied the display. A network? Could it be some kind of planetary defense system? Before Dr. Warren could respond, alarms blared throughout the command center. Zarek rushed to a nearby console, his face pale. Your Majesty, we have a problem. A Yatteran faction is rallying against the human presence. They're blaming us for the crisis. Daphne's eyes met Vincent's across the room, a silent understanding passing between them. She stepped onto a raised platform, activating a planet-wide broadcast. People of Yatter, she began, her voice steady and reassuring, we face an unprecedented crisis. The ancient structures of our world have awakened, causing the gravitational disturbances you're experiencing. I urge you to remain calm and cooperate with the emergency measures being implemented. As Daphne continued her address, Vincent received an urgent communication from one of the reconnaissance teams. Dr. Warren's voice came through, excitement evident despite the static. Mr. Harker, we've found something. An artifact in one of the activated structures. It's resonating with the planet's gravitational field. Vincent's eyes widened as he made the connection. The Royal Circlet. It's interacted with Yatteran tech before. Could it be related? He turned to Daphne, who had just finished a broadcast. We might have a way to interface with the system, but it's risky. We'd need to use your circlet. Daphne didn't hesitate. If it can help save our people, I'll do it. As they prepared for the interface, reports of unrest trickled in. A charismatic Yatteran named Caxlor was spreading anti-human sentiment, gaining traction among certain populations. Vincent felt the weight of the situation bearing down on him. He was an outsider here, and now his presence was being used to stoke fear and resentment. But there was no time for self-doubt. We're ready, Dr. Warren announced, gesturing to a modified console near the amphitheater's core. Daphne approached, removing her circlet with steady hands. Vincent stood close, protective instincts on high alert. Be careful, he murmured, their eyes meeting briefly before Daphne placed the circlet on the console. The effect was immediate. Energy surged through the amphitheater, and Daphne gasped, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The strain on her was evident, her body trembling as she connected with the ancient system. I see our history, she whispered, voice filled with wonder and pain. The network, it's not just a fence. It's a warning. Suddenly, the building shook violently. Alarms blared as the system began to overload. Vincent struggled to maintain his footing, torn between protecting Daphne and securing the rest of the team. An explosion rocked the amphitheater. Through the chaos, Vincent saw a group of Yatterns led by a fierce-looking individual, Caxlor, he presumed, storming into the command center. "Traitors!" Caxlor shouted, pointing at Daphne. "Selling out our world to these aliens." Vincent moved swiftly, positioning himself between the attackers and Daphne. He activated his comm link. "Security team to the main hall, now." As he engaged the first of Caxlor's followers, Vincent heard Daphne cry out behind him. Her connection to the ancient system was intensifying, the strain pushing her to her limits. "Vincent," she called, her voice filled with urgency and fear. "There's something coming. Something the ancients foresaw. This isn't a malfunction. It's preparation." Vincent dodged a blow, his mind racing. They were at the cusp of understanding this crisis, but surrounded by immediate threats. As he fought off another attacker, he realized that the fate of two worlds now hung in the balance, with Daphne at the center of it all. The command center had become a battleground, with the future of Yatta and perhaps Earth hanging by a thread. Vincent steeled himself, knowing that the next few moments would be crucial. The fight was nowhere near the end, and the true nature of the threat they faced was only beginning to reveal itself. Vincent's muscles tensed as he prepared to face both the immediate threat of Caxlor's followers and the looming danger Daphne had sensed. Suddenly, Daphne's cry of pain cut through the chaos. Vincent turned to see her body shaking violently, her face contorted in agony as the strain of the connection overwhelmed her. In that moment, he made a split-second decision. "Dr. Warren, shut it down," Vincent shouted, dodging another attack from Caxlor's group. He fought his way back to Daphne, his heart pounding with every step. Dr. Warren's fingers flew over the console, initiating the disconnection sequence. "It's not responding fast enough," she called out, her voice infused with panic. Vincent reached Daphne just as her knees buckled. He caught her, cradling her trembling form in his arms. Her skin felt feverishly hot, her eyes unfocused and glowing with an otherworldly light. "Hold on, Daphne," he murmured, his voice steady despite the fear gripping his chest. With one arm supporting her, he used his free hand to reach for the circlet. As his fingers touched the ancient artifact, a jolt of energy surged through him. For a brief, disorienting moment, he saw flashes of what Daphne had witnessed. A vast network spanning the planet, pulsing with energy, and beyond that, a looming threat hurtling through the void of space. With a final surge of willpower, Vincent wrenched the circlet from Daphne's head. The connection severed abruptly, and Daphne went limp in his arms, her eyes fluttering closed. "Daphne!" Vincent called, gently lowering her to the ground. He checked her pulse, relief washing over him as he felt its steady beat beneath his fingers. The sound of running footsteps signaled the arrival of the security team. They quickly subdued Caxlor and his followers, restoring a semblance of order to the command center. Daphne's eyes opened slowly, her gaze unfocused. "Vincent," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "The asteroid. We have to warn them." Vincent's brow furrowed. "Asteroid? What did you see?" Before Daphne could respond, Zarek approached, his face etched with concern. "Your Majesty, are you all right?" Daphne struggled to sit up, Vincent supporting her. "We don't have much time," she said, her voice gaining strength. "The ancient system. It's a planetary defense network, and it's detected a threat, an asteroid large enough to destroy Yatter." The command center fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. Zarek was the first to recover, immediately moving to a nearby console. "I'll contact our astronomers. We need to confirm this immediately." Over the next few hours, the command center buzzed with frantic activity. Daphne, despite Vincent's protests, insisted on remaining actively involved, coordinating with her advisors and Earth representatives. Vincent found himself constantly at her side, torn between admiration for her strength and concern for her well-being. He noticed the subtle tremors in her hands, the way she occasionally swayed on her feet when she thought no one was looking. As the hours ticked by, reports began flooding in from Yadrin observatories across the planet. Zarek's face grew increasingly grim as he processed the data. Finally, he approached Daphne and Vincent, his voice low and serious. "Your Majesty, Mr. Harker, the astronomers have confirmed it. A planet-killer asteroid is on a direct collision course with Yadr. Impact is estimated in 3 weeks." The news hit Vincent like a physical blow. He glanced at Daphne, seeing his own shock and fear mirrored in her eyes. "We need to address the people," Daphne said, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "And we need a plan." Vincent nodded, his mind already racing through possibilities. "The ancient defense network. If we can reactivate it fully, we might have a chance." As if on cue, Dr. Warren approached, her face flushed with excitement despite the dire circumstances. "Mr. Harker, Your Majesty, I think I might have an idea. The gravity manipulation technology in the ancient system, if we could combine it with human space technology, we might be able to create a gravitational field strong enough to alter the asteroid's trajectory." Vincent's eyes lit up. "A joint human-Yadrin effort. It's our best shot." Daphne nodded, grit etched on her face. "Then that's what we'll do. Zarek, prepare for a planet-wide broadcast. It's time to unite our people in the face of this threat." As Zarek hurried off to make the necessary arrangements, Vincent and Daphne found themselves alone for a moment. Vincent reached out, gently taking Daphne's hand in his. "Are you sure you're up for this?" he asked softly, concern evident in his voice. Daphne squeezed his hand, a small smile playing on her lips despite the exhaustion in her eyes. "I have to be. My people need me, and I need you by my side." Their eyes met, an unspoken current of emotion passing between them. But before either could speak further, Zarek returned, informing them that the broadcast system was ready. As Daphne moved to address her people, Vincent took his place beside her, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The fate of Yad and perhaps Earth now hung in the balance, and the real work was only just beginning. The fate of Yad and perhaps Earth now hung in the balance, and the real work was only just starting. As the gravity of the situation settled over the command center, Vincent sprang into action. He quickly organized a joint human-Yadrin task force to tackle the monumental challenge ahead. The integration of Earth's advanced space technology with Yadr's ancient gravity manipulation systems would be no small feat. Chief Engineer Marcus Steele, a seasoned veteran of interstellar missions, led the human contingent. His weathered face creased with concentration as he pored over schematics of Yadrin tech. Alongside him, Dr. Lyra Vex, a brilliant xenophysicist, worked tirelessly to decipher the intricate calculations required to manipulate gravitational fields on a planetary scale. The celestial amphitheater buzzed with activity as human and Yadrin scientists and engineers worked side by side. Holographic displays flickered with complex equations and simulations, casting an eerie blue glow over the faces of those gathered around them. Vincent moved from station to station, his military training kicking in as he coordinated the various teams. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, knowing that every second counted. "Mr. Harker," Chief Engineer Steele called out, his voice tinged with frustration. "We're having trouble stabilizing the power flow between our reactor and the Yadrin gravity generators. The energy signatures are incompatible." Vincent frowned, studying the readouts on Steele's screen. "What about using the Royal Circlet as an interface? It's interacted with both technologies before." Dr. Vex's eyes lit up. "That could work. The circlet's unique properties might serve as a bridge between our systems. As the technical teams redoubled their efforts, Queen Daphne focused on the political front. She moved gracefully through the amphitheater, mediating disputes between human and Yadran factions as they arose. "We must work together," she urged a group of Yadran officials who were arguing with their human counterparts. "Our survival depends on unity." The hours flew by, punctuated by moments of progress and setbacks. As dawn approached, the combined team prepared for the first full-scale test of the enhanced planetary defense system. Vincent found Daphne in a quiet corner of the control room, her face etched with worry. He approached her, feeling the pull of their unspoken connection. "How are you holding up?" he asked softly. Daphne turned to him, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and persistence. "I'm scared, Vincent. What if this doesn't work?" Without thinking, Vincent pulled her into his arms. The stress of the past days, the looming threat, and their growing feelings for each other culminated in a passionate embrace. For a brief moment, the world fell away, leaving only the two of them. Their lips were mere inches apart when an urgent alarm blared through the control room. They sprang apart, reality crashing back in full force. "What's happening?" Vincent demanded, rushing to the main console. Dr. Vex's face was pale as she read the incoming data. "We've detected a massive gravitational anomaly forming beneath the planet's surface. It's a result of activating the defense system." Zarek's voice was grim as he added, "If we don't stabilize it, the anomaly could tear Yadr apart from the inside out." Vincent's mind raced. They had come so far, only to face another potentially world-ending crisis. He quickly assembled a crisis team, including Dr. Vex, Chief Engineer Steele, and Zarek. After a hurried discussion, they reached a sobering conclusion. The only way to stabilize the planet's core was to manually adjust the gravity generators at key points across the planetary network. "We'll need to send teams to remote locations all over Yadr," Steele explained, pointing to a holographic map of the planet. "Many of these areas are extremely dangerous, even under normal conditions." Vincent nodded, already formulating a plan. "We'll need our best people on this. I'll lead one of the teams myself." "No!" Daphne interjected, her voice firm. "I'll go. My connection to the ancient Yadran technology makes me the best candidate for this mission." Vincent opened his mouth to protest, but the dedication in Daphne's eyes made him pause. He knew she was right, even as every fiber of his being rebelled against putting her in danger. As they prepared for the perilous mission, an unexpected figure approached. Caxlor, the former leader of the anti-human faction, stood before them, his posture hesitant but resolute. "We want to help," he said, gesturing to his followers. "Many of us are skilled in navigating Yadr's most treacherous terrains. Let us prove our commitment to saving our world." Vincent studied Caxlor's face, searching for any sign of deception. Finding none, he nodded. "Very well. We'll form mixed teams. Humans, loyal Yadrans, and your people. We're stronger together." As the teams prepared to deploy, Dr. Vex made a startling announcement. The gravitational anomaly. It's not just a side effect. It's a deliberate feature of the ancient system. I believe it's designed to harness the planet's core energy as an additional power source for the asteroid deflection. The implications of this discovery sent a ripple of both hope and fear through the assembled group. Vincent felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders as he realized the complexity of the task ahead. "All right," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his chest. "We have one shot at this. Each team will be linked to central command here in the amphitheater. We move in sync, stabilize the generators, and pray it's enough to power the deflection system." As the teams dispersed, Vincent caught Daphne's hand. Their eyes met, 1,000 unspoken words passing between them. "Be careful," he said softly. Daphne squeezed his hand. You too. We have a lot to talk about when this is over. With a final nod, they parted, each heading to their assigned teams. As Vincent watched Daphne's team depart, he couldn't shake the feeling that their greatest challenges still lay ahead. The race to save Yada had entered its most critical phase, and the clock was ticking relentlessly. As the teams dispersed to their assigned locations, Vincent couldn't shake the gnawing worry in his gut. He watched Daphne's transport disappear into the horizon, her perseverance etched in his memory. The gravity of their mission greatly troubled on him as he prepared his own team for departure. Hours passed with sporadic updates from the field teams. Vincent coordinated efforts from the central command, his eyes constantly darting to the console tracking Daphne's team. Suddenly, an alarm blared through the celestial amphitheater. Daphne's signal had gone dark. What happened? Vincent demanded, his heart racing. Zarek's fingers flew over the holographic controls. We've lost contact with the Queen's team. Their last known location was in a highly unstable region. Without hesitation, Vincent turned to Chief Engineer Steele. We're going after them. Prepare the specialized equipment. Steele nodded grimly, already mobilizing his team. Within minutes, they were aboard a transport, racing towards the unstable zone. As they neared their destination, the true extent of the gravitational chaos became apparent. The landscape before them seemed to ripple and shift, defying the laws of physics. Vincent activated his gravity modulators, feeling the strange sensation of his weight fluctuating. Stay alert, he warned Steele. This area is more unstable than we anticipated. They ventured into the maelstrom, each step a calculated risk. Objects floated past them, caught in localized gravity fields. A boulder the size of a car suddenly plummeted to the ground inches from Vincent's feet, only to rocket skyward moments later. Steele consulted his instruments, frowning. The gravitational fluctuations are intensifying. We need to move quickly. As they pressed deeper into the unstable zone, Vincent spotted a familiar piece of equipment half buried in the shifting terrain. There, he pointed. That's from Daphne's team. They followed the trail of scattered gear, Vincent's concern mounting with each discovered item. The sound of Steele's voice cut through his thoughts. Sir, look. Steele gestured towards a depression in the landscape ahead. It's a gravity well. Vincent's enhanced vision zoomed in on the scene. His heart lurched as he spotted familiar figures pinned to the ground at the bottom of the well. Daphne and her team were trapped, unable to move against the intensified gravitational force. We need to get them out, Vincent said, his mind racing through potential solutions. He turned to Steele. Can we use our suit's modulators to counteract the well's pull? Steele ran quick calculations on his wrist computer. It's risky but possible. We'll need to fine-tune the settings constantly to avoid being pulled in ourselves. Vincent nodded, steeling himself for the task ahead. I'll go in. Be ready to extract us quickly. Activating his suit's gravity modulators to maximum, Vincent approached the edge of the well. He felt the pull immediately, his boots struggling to maintain contact with the ground. With careful, measured movements, he began his descent. The strain on his suit systems increased with each step. Warning lights flashed across his HUD as he neared the bottom of the well. Finally, he reached Daphne and her team. Vincent, Daphne gasped, her eyes wide with relief and exhaustion. Hold on, Vincent said, kneeling beside her. We're getting you out of here. Working swiftly, Vincent attached gravity stabilizers to each team member. The devices hummed to life, creating localized fields to counteract the well's pull. One by one, they began to move, fighting against the oppressive force holding them down. Steele now! Vincent called into his comm as they neared the edge of the well. The chief engineer activated a series of portable gravity anchors, creating a stable path out of the well. With a final burst of effort, Vincent helped Daphne and her team climb to safety. As they caught their breath on stable ground, Vincent turned to Daphne. Their eyes met, a moment of unspoken emotion passing between them. But the respite was short-lived. "The generator complex," Daphne said, her voice hoarse but urgent. "It's causing this instability. We need to reach it." Vincent nodded, helping her to her feet. "Lead the way." Guided by Daphne's intuition and her connection to the ancient technology, they navigated through the chaotic landscape. Finally, they reached a hidden entrance, seamlessly integrated into the rocky terrain. As the door slid open, they were greeted by a sight that took their breath away. Towering crystalline pillars pulsed with energy, casting an ethereal glow throughout the vast chamber. "Incredible," Steele murmured, his engineer's mind already analyzing the alien technology. Their wonder was short-lived. A high-pitched whine filled the air, and the chamber's layout began to shift. Gravity fields wobbled unpredictably, and from hidden alcoves, sleek robotic figures emerged. "It's the security system," Daphne realized. "It sees us as intruders." Vincent's military training kicked in. "Steele, focus on disabling those robots." "Daphne, see if you can communicate with the system, using your circlet. I'll provide cover." As they sprang into action, the chamber descended into chaos. Vincent ducked and weaved through shifting gravity fields, drawing the attention of the robotic sentinels. Steele worked feverishly to hack into their systems, while Daphne stood at the center of the room, her circlet glowing as she attempted to interface with the ancient technology. Suddenly, the entire complex shuddered. Alarms blared, their alien tones grating on human ears. "The generator's going critical," Steele shouted over the din. "If it blows, it could take the whole planetary network with it." Daphne's eyes snapped open, a look of stubborn persistence on her face. "The core," she said. "I need to interface directly with the core." Vincent felt a surge of protest rise in his throat, but he swallowed it back. He knew she was right. "I'll clear a path," he said instead. As Vincent and Steele held off the remaining security measures, Daphne made her way to the heart of the generator. The core chamber was a swirling vortex of energy, arcs of power lashing out at random intervals. Daphne took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. She stepped into the maelstrom, her circlet blazing with light as it connected to the ancient systems. Outside, Vincent and Steele fought a desperate battle against time and technology. The complex groaned around them, the strain of the malfunctioning generator becoming more apparent with each passing second. "We're running out of time," Steele warned, his face pale with exhaustion and worry. Vincent's eyes remained fixed on the core chamber entrance. "Come on, Daphne," he muttered. "You can do this." Inside the core, Daphne grappled with forces beyond human comprehension. Her mind was awash with information, the entire history and function of Yadder's gravitational network flooding through her consciousness. The strain was immense, threatening to overwhelm her, but she pushed through, driven by the knowledge that the fate of her world hung in the balance. With a final, monumental effort, Daphne asserted control over the ancient systems. The chaotic energies surrounding her began to stabilize, the generator's output returning to normal parameters. As Daphne emerged from the core, Vincent rushed to her side, catching her as she stumbled. Their eyes met, a moment of shared relief and something deeper passing between them. But their respite was short-lived. The complex's alarms changed pitch, a new urgency in their tone. "The security system," Steele called out, his voice tight with alarm. "It's initiated a self-destruct sequence. We have minutes before this whole place goes up." Vincent's mind raced, formulating a plan even as he supported Daphne. "We need to move now," he said, his voice carrying the unmistakable tone of command. As they raced through the crumbling complex, Vincent couldn't help but feel that while they had won this battle, the war for Yadder's survival was far from finished. The true test still lay ahead, with the asteroid looming ever closer. But for now, all that mattered was getting his team to safety, and the warmth of Daphne in his arms as they ran towards an uncertain future. The ground beneath their feet trembled as they emerged from the complex, a stark reminder of the instability they had narrowly averted. As they made their way back to the celestial amphitheater, Vincent noticed strange formations rising from the earth. Ancient structures, long buried beneath Yatter's surface, now breached the ground like colossal monuments to a forgotten past. The stabilization must have triggered something, Daphne said, her eyes wide with wonder and concern. Steele's wrist computer beeped urgently. We're picking up massive energy signatures from these structures. They're awakening. Their journey back was fraught with challenges as they navigated the rapidly changing landscape. Newly formed chasms and shifting terrain forced them to constantly adjust their route. Vincent's military training kicked in as he guided the team through the treacherous path. Upon reaching the celestial amphitheater, they were met with a flurry of activity. Dr. Lyra Vex rushed towards them, her face etched with worry. "We have a problem," she said without preamble. "The gravitational disturbances have altered the asteroid's trajectory. It's accelerated its approach." Vincent felt his stomach drop. "How long do we have?" "Less than a week," Dr. Vex replied grimly. The news hit the team like a physical blow. Their brief moment of triumph evaporated, replaced by a renewed sense of urgency. Vincent wasted no time. "Steele, work with the engineering team to maximize power output from our Starship reactor. Dr. Vex, I need you and Zarek to refine the targeting systems." As the team dispersed to their tasks, Daphne approached Vincent. "I have an idea," she said. "These newly emerged structures, they might hold the key to enhancing our defenses." Vincent nodded, trusting her instincts. "Organize exploration teams. We need to know what we're dealing with." Over the next few days, the celestial amphitheater transformed into a hive of frantic activity. Vincent coordinated the final preparations for the asteroid deflection attempt, his days blurring into nights as he worked tirelessly. Daphne's exploration teams made a breakthrough on the third day. They discovered a massive underground facility beneath Yada's capital city, untouched for millennia. The facility housed gravity manipulation technology far beyond their current capabilities. "I need to interface with the central computer," Daphne said, her circlet glowing in anticipation. Vincent hesitated, remembering the strain she had endured in the generator complex. "Are you sure it's safe?" Daphne's eyes met his, filled with drive. "It's our best chance." As Daphne connected with the ancient system, Vincent oversaw the integration of the new technology. The process was grueling, with human and Yadran engineers working around the clock to merge the advanced systems with their existing setup. Tensions rose as fatigue set in. Vincent found himself mediating disputes between exhausted crew members, reminding them of the stakes they faced. On the fifth day, with the asteroid looming ever closer, Daphne emerged from her interface with the ancient computer. Her eyes were bright with newfound knowledge. "Our ancestors face a similar threat," she explained. "This defense network, it was built for exactly this purpose." Armed with this knowledge, the team refined their plan. They would use the enhanced gravity manipulation technology to create a massive field, altering the asteroid's course. However, the power required posed a significant risk to Yatter itself. Vincent and Daphne exchanged a look, both understanding the implications. "We need a backup plan," Vincent said. Together, they proposed a two-pronged approach. While the main team focused on the planetary defense system, a smaller team would pilot a ship equipped with gravity manipulation technology as a last line of defense. As the preparations for this final push began, Vincent and Daphne found a moment alone. The weight of their responsibilities, the danger ahead, and their unspoken feelings coalesced into a single, passionate embrace. "Be careful up there," Daphne whispered, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. Vincent held her tightly, memorizing the feel of her in his arms. "You too. We've got a planet to save." As the final countdown began, Vincent boarded the specially equipped ship with Steele, Dr. Vex, and a small crew. They launched into Yatter's orbit, a last desperate hope should the planetary system fail. On the surface, Daphne took her place at the heart of the celestial amphitheater. She closed her eyes, feeling the ancient power of Yatter course through her as the defense system powered up. The planet trembled as unprecedented amounts of energy surged through the network. In orbit, Vincent watched the surface of Yatter glow with otherworldly light. His hand hovered over the controls, ready to act if the unthinkable happened. As the asteroid entered the effective range of Yatter's defenses, time seemed to slow. Vincent's eyes darted between the approaching mass and the readings from the planet below. The fate of an entire world hung in the balance, with success or failure to be determined in the next few crucial moments. A blinding flash erupted from Yatter's surface, followed by a shockwave that rocked Vincent's ship. Alarms blared across the bridge as the vessel's sensors struggled to make sense of the sudden energy surge. "Status report," Vincent barked, his fist clenched as he gripped the command chair. Steele's fingers flew across his console. Massive power fluctuations detected planet-wide, so the defense network is destabilizing. Dr. Vex's voice cut through the chaos. "The targeting systems are compromised. We're losing accuracy on the gravity field." Vincent's mind raced. They were so close. But this unforeseen complication threatened to unravel everything they had fought for. He made a split-second decision. "Helm, take us in closer to the asteroid," he ordered. "Steele, I need you to reconfigure our gravity generators. We're going to create a localized gravity well to supplement the planetary system." Steele's eyes widened. "Sir, that'll put us dangerously close to the asteroid's gravitational field. If we miscalculate..." "We don't have a choice," Vincent cut him off. "It's this or we lose Yatter." As the ship maneuvered into position, Vincent opened a channel to the surface. Daphne's holographic image appeared, her face etched with concern. "Vincent, we have a situation," she said, her voice tight. "The power surges are overloading our ancient facilities. We're at risk of a planet-wide blackout." Vincent's heart sank. "Can you stabilize it?" Daphne's eyes flashed with perseverance. "I have an idea. We'll redirect the excess energy through the underground facility we discovered. It should act as a massive capacitor." "Do it," Vincent nodded. "We'll handle things up here." As Daphne's image faded, Vincent turned his attention back to the asteroid looming before them. Steele worked feverishly at his station, sweat beading on his brow as he modified the ship's gravity generators. "Ready, sir," Steele announced. "But we'll only get one shot at this." Vincent nodded grimly. "Dr. Vex, I need you to calculate the precise moment to activate our gravity pulse. It has to synchronize perfectly with the planetary system's output." The tension on the bridge was palpable as they waited for the right moment. Vincent's eyes darted between the asteroid and the readings from Yatter's surface, silently willing Daphne to succeed in her efforts. Suddenly, the ship's sensors registered a massive energy spike from the planet. The ancient underground facility had come online, stabilizing the planetary defense network. "Now!" Dr. Vex shouted. Vincent slammed his hand down on the activation control. The ship vibrated violently as its gravity generator pulsed in tandem with Yatter's planetary system. A colossal, invisible force enveloped the asteroid. For several heart-stopping seconds, nothing seemed to happen. The asteroid continued its inexorable approach, resisting the combined gravitational assault. Then, almost imperceptibly at first, its trajectory began to shift. Degree by agonizing degree, the massive celestial body veered away from its collision course with Yatter. A cheer erupted on the bridge as the asteroid's new trajectory was confirmed. They had done it. Yatter was saved. But their victory was short-lived. The ship lurched violently, systems failing across the board. Engine failure. Steele yelled over the din of alarms. Life support critical. Vincent's elation turned to dread as he realized their predicament. They had succeeded in saving Yatter, but at the cost of their own safety. With their ship crippled and drifting, they were now the ones in desperate need of rescue. As Vincent prepared to send out a distress call, he couldn't help but wonder if their triumph had come at too high a price. The asteroid may have been diverted, but the challenges facing them and the people of Yatter were just getting started. The ship's systems flickered ominously as Vincent and his crew grappled with their new predicament. Life support failing, Steele reported, his voice strained. We've got maybe 48 hours before we suffocate, Dr. Vex finished grimly. Vincent's mind raced. They had saved Yatter, but at what cost? He pushed the thought aside, focusing on their immediate survival. Steele, concentrate on keeping life support functional. Dr. Vex, I need options for stabilizing our orbit. As they worked feverishly to extend their dwindling time, Vincent's thoughts turned to Daphne and the planet below. Would they even know the danger his crew now faced? On Yatter's surface, alarms blared in the celestial amphitheater. Daphne's eyes widened as she processed the data streaming across her displays. No, she whispered, her heart sinking as she realized the peril Vincent and his team now faced. She turned to her staff, her voice carrying the weight of command. We need a rescue plan now. As if in answer to her demand, Caxlor stepped forward. The former anti-human faction leader's eyes gleamed with perseverance. I may have a solution, he said, his voice steady. We have an ancient Yatteran scout ship. With some modifications using salvaged human technology, we could create a vessel capable of reaching them in time. Daphne's surprise at Caxlor's proposal quickly gave way to hope. She nodded sharply. Make it happen. The next hours were a blur of activity. Caxlor led a team of Yatteran engineers and human technicians in a frantic race against time. They worked tirelessly, integrating parts from the human Starship reactor with Yatteran gravity manipulation technology. As the hybrid scout ship took shape, tensions rose among the Yatteran population. Protests erupted in the streets, with some arguing against using precious resources to save the humans. Others rallied in support, recognizing the debt they owed to Vincent and his team. Daphne addressed her people, her voice carrying across the city. The humans risked everything to save our world, she declared. We owe them not just our gratitude, but our aid. This alliance has already proven its worth. Now, we must prove our commitment to it. Her words swayed many, but time was running short. As the modified scout ship neared completion, a new crisis emerged. The asteroid deflection had left a dangerous debris field in Yatter's orbit, a gauntlet the rescue ship would have to navigate. Zarek, the veteran soldier, stepped forward. I'll pilot the ship, he volunteered, his eyes hard with grit. I've flown through worse. Daphne nodded, grateful for his expertise. Then, after a moment's hesitation, she made a decision that sent shockwaves through her staff. I'm going too. Protests immediately erupted, but Daphne silenced them with a raised hand. My presence will demonstrate our commitment to this alliance, she explained. And if we encounter any issues with the ancient technology, I may be our best chance at resolving them. As final preparations were made, Daphne's mind turned to Vincent. She could almost feel the warmth of his embrace, the intensity of his gaze. She pushed the thoughts aside, focusing on the task at hand. The hybrid scout ship roared to life, its engines a mix of human and Yatteran technology. Zarek's hands danced across the controls as they lifted off, the sleek vessel climbing rapidly through Yatter's atmosphere. As they broke orbit, the debris field loomed before them. Zarek's fists tight as he guided the ship through the treacherous maze of twisted metal and rock. The ship's enhanced gravity manipulators hummed, creating microfields that deflected smaller pieces of debris. "We're approaching Vincent's ship," Daphne announced, her eyes fixed on the sensor readings. Then she gasped. No. The damaged vessel was drifting perilously close to one of Yatter's moons. Its erratic orbit was rapidly decaying, drawn inexorably towards the lunar surface. "We'll never reach them in time," Zarek growled, frustration evident in his voice. But Daphne's mind was racing, drawing on her newfound knowledge of ancient Yatteran technology. "We might," she said, her voice tight with concentration, "if we use our gravity manipulators to create a stabilizing field around their ship." Zarek's eyes widened. "That's never been done before. The strain on our systems." "We have no choice," Daphne cut him off. "Prepare to execute on my mark." As they closed the distance, Daphne's fingers flew across the control panel, making rapid calculations. "Now!" she shouted. The scout ship shuddered as its gravity manipulators engaged at full power. A shimmering field expanded outward, enveloping both vessels. Vincent's ship slowed its descent towards the moon, stabilizing in its new orbit. Alarms blared across the scout ship's bridge as the hybrid system strained under the immense load. "We can't maintain this for long," Zarek warned, his voice tight. "Then let's make this quick," Daphne replied. "Bring us alongside for docking." Zarek's piloting skills were put to the ultimate test as he maneuvered the scout ship into position. With a metallic clang, the two vessels connected. Daphne led the rescue team aboard Vincent's ship, her heart pounding. They made their way through darkened corridors, the air thin and growing thinner. They found Vincent and Steele in the engine room, working desperately to keep critical systems online. As Daphne's eyes met Vincent's, a jolt of electricity seemed to pass between them. "Cutting it a bit close, aren't you?" Vincent quipped, his voice hoarse but his eyes shining with relief and something deeper. "You know me," Daphne replied, a smile tugging at her lips despite the dire situation. "I like to make an entrance." There was no time for further exchanges. The rescue team quickly began transferring essential equipment and data to the scout ship. As the last of the crew boarded, the gravity bubble began to collapse. "We're out of time," Zarek's voice crackled over the comms. "We need to leave now." They sealed the airlock, just as the bubble failed completely. The scout ship broke away, the damaged vessel they'd left behind immediately resuming its fatal plunge towards the moon's surface. But their ordeal was a long way to go. As they turned back towards Yatter, it became clear that the rescue operation had taken a severe toll on the hybrid vessel. "We're losing power," Zarek reported, his voice grim. "At this rate, we won't make it back to the surface." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. They had come so far, only to face failure at the final hurdle. Then Vincent spoke up, his voice carrying the quiet confidence that had seen them through so many crises. "We might not have enough power," he said, "but we have something else. Gravity." All eyes turned to him as he outlined his plan. It was dangerous, perhaps even more so than the rescue had been. But as Daphne met his gaze, she knew it was their only chance. "Do it," she ordered, her voice steady despite the fear clutching at her heart. Zarek nodded, his hands already moving across the controls. The scout ship banked hard, aiming not for Yatter, but for its moon. As they approached the lunar surface, Vincent's voice rang out. "Prepare for slingshot maneuver. This is going to get rough." The ship skimmed the moon's surface, so close that the lunar dust kicked up in their wake. The hull groaned under the strain as they accelerated, harnessing the moon's gravity to propel them forward. They emerged from behind the moon at tremendous speed, Yatta looming large before them. But their victory was short-lived as a new problem became apparent. "We're coming in too hot," Zarek shouted over the sound of straining metal. "At this speed, we'll burn up in the atmosphere." As warning klaxons blared and the ship shuddered around them, Vincent and Daphne exchanged a look. They had overcome so much together. Now, on the threshold of their home, they faced perhaps their greatest challenge yet. The atmosphere of Yatter rushed up to meet them, the ship's hull beginning to glow from the friction. In these crucial moments, the fate of not just their crew, but of the fledgling human Yatteran alliance itself, hung in the balance. Balance. Vincent's mind raced. Years of military training and crisis management kicking into overdrive. He turned to Daphne, their eyes meeting in a moment of shared understanding. "The gravity manipulators," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "We can use them in reverse." Daphne's eyes widened as she grasped his idea. "Yes, and I know just how to amplify the effect." Her fingers flew across the control panel, accessing the Yatteran gravity network. "There are key points in the planet's field that we can use to our advantage." Zarek's hands gripped the controls, his knuckles tightening with tension. "Just tell me where to aim this thing." Vincent and Daphne worked in tandem, their voices overlapping as they directed Zarek through the optimal entry corridor. The ship shuddered violently, its hull glowing red-hot from the friction of atmospheric entry. In the engine room, Steele fought a losing battle against cascading system failures. "We're losing power fast," he shouted over the comm. "Whatever you're planning, do it quick." As they plummeted towards the surface, Vincent realized a standard landing was impossible. He turned to Daphne, his expression grim. "We need to crash land." "Are you insane?" Zarad growled. "Listen," Vincent pressed on. "If we divert all remaining power to the gravity manipulators, we can create a low-gravity bubble on the surface. It'll cushion our impact." Daphne hesitated for a split second, then nodded. "Do it." The ship's engines died as the last of their energy was channeled into the gravity systems. A shimmering field of distorted space appeared beneath them, growing larger as they approached. "Brace for impact," Vincent yelled. The scout ship slammed into the ground with a thunderous crash. Metal screamed as the hull buckled and tore. The crew was thrown about like rag dolls, held in place only by their restraints. But the low-gravity field did its job, preventing the impact from becoming a complete catastrophe. When the ship finally skidded to a stop, an eerie silence fell. Then, the hiss of emergency systems activating, sealing off breached sections of the hull. Vincent unstrapped himself, wincing at the pain in his ribs. "Sound off. Is everyone all right?" A chorus of groans and affirmatives answered him. He made his way to Daphne, helping her to her feet. "You okay?" She nodded, a trickle of blood running down her forehead. "I've had softer landings." They emerged from the wreckage into an alien landscape. Dense, unfamiliar vegetation surrounded them, and in the distance, strange rock formations jutted against the sky. The air was thick and humid, filled with unfamiliar scents. "Where are we?" Steele asked, stumbling out of the ship. Daphne surveyed their surroundings, her expression troubled. "Far from any settlements, that's for certain. This region is completely uninhabited." Vincent's military training kicked in. "All right, listen up. We need to salvage whatever we can from the ship. Food, water, medical supplies, anything useful. Steele, see what you can do about rigging up a long-range communicator." As the crew set to work, Daphne approached Vincent. "I might be able to help with communications." She held up a small device. "This is linked to Yatter's planetary network. If I can boost its signal, we might be able to send out a distress call." Vincent nodded. "Do it. In the meantime, we need to set up a defensible camp. We have no idea what kind of threats we might face out here." As the alien sun began to set, casting long shadows across the crash site, Vincent and Daphne worked side by side to construct makeshift shelters. The physical labor and shared sense of purpose drew them closer, their hands occasionally brushing as they worked. "You know," Vincent said, pausing to wipe sweat from his brow, When I imagined spending time alone with you, this wasn't exactly what I had in mind. Daphne couldn't help but smile. Oh, and what did you have in mind, Captain? Before Vincent could respond, Steele called out from the ship. I've got something, a signal, but it's weak. They rushed over, hope rising in their chests. But as they listened to the faint, garbled transmission, it became clear that rescue wasn't coming anytime soon. We're on our own, Vincent said, his voice low. He turned to address the crew. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we start scouting the area. We need to find water, assess potential threats, and look for anything that might help us survive until rescue arrives. As night fell on the alien world, Vincent and Daphne found themselves standing at the edge of the camp, looking out into the unfamiliar darkness. Strange sounds echoed from the dense vegetation, and unfamiliar stars twinkled overhead. What do you think our chances are? Daphne asked softly. Vincent turned to her, his expression determined. Better than they were an hour ago. We're alive. We're together, and we've got a talented crew. We'll find a way out of this. Daphne nodded, drawing strength from his confidence. As they stood there, shoulders almost touching, the challenges ahead seemed a little less daunting. Whatever this alien world had in store for them, they would face it together. Together, as the alien night deepened, Vincent organized the group into watch shifts, ensuring their safety in this unknown environment. The next morning, they set out to explore their surroundings. The dense vegetation proved challenging to navigate, with thick vines and towering alien flora obstructing their path. Vincent led the way, his military training evident in every calculated move. Watch your step, he warned, pointing to a patch of deceptively solid-looking ground. The soil here is unstable. As they pressed on, the landscape began to change. The lush vegetation thinned out, giving way to an expanse of crystalline formations. The structures jutted from the ground at odd angles, their surfaces refracting light in mesmerizing patterns. Incredible, Daphne breathed, reaching out to touch one of the formations. She quickly pulled her hand back with a hiss. Sharp. Vincent nodded grimly. We'll need to move carefully through here. One wrong step could mean a nasty cut. Or worse. They picked their way through the crystal field, the structures growing larger and more intricate as they progressed. On the third day of their journey, as the twin sons of Yad climbed high in the alien sky, Steele called out from the front of the group, Captain, you need to see this. Vincent and Daphne hurried forward, their eyes widening at the sight before them. Half buried in the crystalline soil was the unmistakable form of a Yadran scout ship, its hull pitted and scarred by years of exposure. It looks like it's been here for quite some time, Daphne observed, running her hand along the ship's weathered surface. Vincent nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. All right, let's search it. There might be supplies or equipment we can salvage. The team spread out, combing through the wreckage. As they worked, bioluminescent flora that had taken root on the ship began to glow in response to their movement, casting an eerie light over the scene. Over here, Steele's excited voice rang out from within the crashed vessel. I've found something. Vincent and Daphne rushed to join him in what remained of the ship's control room. Steele held up a small, cylindrical object, his eyes shining with triumph. It's the data core, he explained, and it looks like it might still be functional. With Daphne's assistance, they managed to connect the core to a portable power source. After a tense moment, it hummed to life, holographic displays flickering into existence around them. It's a log, Daphne said, her fingers dancing over the controls. This ship was part of a secret expedition to an ancient outpost, the same one we're looking for. Vincent leaned in, studying the data. Can you access their navigation data? Daphne nodded, bringing up a map of the region. Here, she said, pointing to a blinking marker. These coordinates could cut days off our journey. As the team prepared to set out on their new course, a faint energy signature caught Daphne's attention. She frowned, adjusting the sensors on her handheld device. "There's something in that ravine," she said, pointing to a deep fissure in the crystalline landscape. "It's weak, but it's definitely artificial." Vincent considered for a moment, then nodded. "We should check it out. Steele, Dr. Vex, you're with us. The rest of you, set up camp here and keep an eye on our supplies." The small group made their way down into the ravine, the crystalline walls rising high above them. As they reached the bottom, Vincent spotted an anomaly in the rock face. "There," he said, running his hand along a seam in the stone. "This isn't natural." Daphne stepped forward, her eyes narrowing in concentration. She placed her palm against the rock, and to everyone's surprise, lines of light began to spread from her touch. With a low rumble, a section of the wall slid aside, revealing a dark passage. "How did you do that?" Steele asked, his voice filled with awe. Daphne shook her head, looking as surprised as the others. "I'm not sure. It's like the system recognized me somehow." Vincent stepped into the passage, activating his portable light. "Well, whatever the reason, we've found our way in. Stay alert, everyone. We don't know what we're walking into." As they ventured deeper into the complex, ancient systems began to stir. Lights flickered to life, illuminating corridors that hadn't seen use in millennia. The air grew thick with the scent of ozone and something older, more primal. Suddenly, a series of clicks and words echoed through the hallway. Vincent's combat instincts kicked in immediately. "Get down!" he shouted, tackling Daphne to the ground as energy bolts sizzled through the air where they had been standing. Ancient defense turrets had sprung to life, their targeting systems locking onto the intruders. Vincent rolled to his feet, drawing his sidearm in one fluid motion. He fired 2 precise shots, disabling the nearest turret. "Steele, can you shut these things down?" he called out, ducking behind a pillar as more energy bolts scorched the air. The engineer was already working, his fingers flying over a nearby control panel. "I'm trying, but this system is like nothing I've ever seen." Daphne scrambled to join him, her eyes scanning the alien symbols. Without fully understanding how, she began to input commands, her movements guided by an intuition she couldn't explain. The turrets fell silent, the corridor plunging into an eerie quiet. Vincent emerged from cover, his weapon still at the ready. "Nice work," he said, nodding to Daphne and Steele. "But let's keep moving. I don't want to stick around and see what other surprises this place has in store for us." As they pressed deeper into the complex, the architecture became more intricate, the technology more advanced. Daphne found herself drawn to various consoles and devices, her understanding of their functions growing with each interaction. "This place," she said, her voice filled with wonder, "it's not just an outpost. It's part of a network that spans the entire planet." Vincent raised an eyebrow. "A network? For what purpose?" Before Daphne could answer, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. Cracks appeared in the walls, fragments of ancient technology raining down around them. "The complex is destabilizing," Steele shouted over the growing rumble. "We need to find a way out." Daphne's eyes widened as she accessed a nearby terminal. "There's a transport system. It could get us out of here, maybe even take us closer to our destination." Vincent looked around at the crumbling structure, then back to Daphne. He saw the commitment in her eyes and made his decision. "Do it," he said. "Whatever happens, we're in this together." As Daphne worked to activate the transport system, Vincent and Steele fought to keep the collapsing ceiling at bay. With seconds to spare, a cylindrical pod rose from the floor, its doors sliding open invitingly. "Everyone in now," Vincent ordered, ushering the team into the pod. As the door sealed behind them, Daphne input the final command. The pod hummed to life, and suddenly they were hurtling through a network of tunnels at incredible speed. When the pod finally came to a stop and the doors slid open, they found themselves in a vast chamber unlike anything they had seen before. The architecture was sleek and advanced, pulsing with an energy that seemed almost alive. Vincent stepped out first, his eyes scanning for potential threats. Finding none, he turned back to the group, his expression a mix of awe and determination. "Well," he said, a hint of a smile playing at his lips, "looks like we've found our ancient outpost. Now let's see what secrets it's been keeping all these years." As the team spread out to explore the chamber, Vincent caught Daphne's eye. In that shared look, they both knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The mystery of the ancient Yadran civilization was just beginning to unfold, and they were at the heart of it all. As Vincent's words hung in the air, the team spread out to explore the vast chamber. The ancient outpost architecture was a marvel of sleek lines and pulsing energy, unlike anything they had encountered before. Vincent and Daphne took point, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous space as they approached a large control console at the center of the room. Daphne's fingers hovered over the unfamiliar symbols etched into the console's surface. "This technology is... It's incredible," she breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. Vincent nodded, scanning the room for potential threats. "Just be careful. We don't know what." His warning came too late. Daphne's hand brushed against a raised glyph, and suddenly the air around them shimmered. A three-dimensional holographic display burst to life, filling the chamber with a dazzling representation of Yadr's solar system. "Oh my!" Daphne gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The hologram revealed previously unknown celestial bodies and artificial structures orbiting the planet. Vincent leaned in, his tactical mind already analyzing the strategic implications of these defenses. "Look there," he said, pointing to a distant moon. A faint signal pulsed from its surface, blinking insistently. "That looks like a distress beacon." Daphne nodded, her fingers dancing over the controls as she zoomed in on the signal. It could be other survivors, or maybe even an active Yadran outpost. Before they could discuss further, Steele's voice crackled over their comms. "Captain, Dr. Vex and I have found something. You need to see this." Vincent and Daphne exchanged a glance before hurrying to join their teammates. They found Steele and Dr. Vex in a hidden laboratory, standing before a row of sleek cryogenic pods. "Most of them are empty," Dr. Vex explained, his voice hushed with awe. "But this one..." He gestured to a pod at the end of the row, its surface frosted over but clearly active. Vincent approached cautiously, wiping away the condensation to reveal the face of a Yadran, perfectly preserved in suspended animation. "Is it alive?" Daphne asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Vex nodded. "As far as I can tell, yes. The question is, do we wake them?" The ethical implications hung heavy in the air. Before anyone could respond, a low hum filled the complex. Lights flickered to life throughout the chamber, and dormant machinery began to whir and click. "What's happening?" Steele asked, his hand instinctively reaching for his tool belt. Vincent's eyes narrowed. "The outpost is waking up." As if in response to his words, a massive door at the far end of the chamber began to slide open. The grinding of ancient gears filled the air as the team watched, transfixed. As the door fully retracted, it revealed a hangar bay housing a fleet of sleek spacecraft. "Are those ships?" Daphne breathed, her eyes wide with possibility. Vincent nodded, already moving towards the nearest vessel. "Our ticket out of here, if we can figure out how to fly them." The team quickly divided into groups. Steele led a team of engineers to assess the ship's mechanical systems, while Dr. Vex and Daphne focused on deciphering the control interfaces. Vincent organized search parties to explore the deeper recesses of the complex, looking for anything that might help them understand and operate the ancient vessels. As he led a small group down a narrow corridor, the walls suddenly sealed behind them with a resounding thud. "Defense systems," Vincent muttered, his hand going to his weapon. "Stay alert, everyone." They navigated through the labyrinthine passages, dodging security drones and sealed doors. Vincent's military training kicked in as he guided his team through the obstacles, using hand signals and whispered commands. Finally, they reached a sealed vault. Vincent's fingers flew over the locking mechanism, drawing on everything Daphne had taught him about Yadrin technology. With a satisfying click, the door swung open. Inside, they found not only the crystalline fuel they needed for the ships, but also a cache of advanced weaponry and technology. Vincent's mind raced with the implications, but he pushed those thoughts aside. They had a mission to complete. As they made their way back to the main chamber, Vincent's calm crackled to life. Daphne's voice came through, tight with urgency. "Vincent, we've got incoming signals. Multiple vessels approaching our location." "Understood," Vincent replied, picking up the pace. "We're on our way back with the fuel. How's our exit strategy looking?" "We've made progress on the navigation systems," Daphne reported, "but we'll need to move fast." When they reached the hangar bay, it was a flurry of activity. Steele and his team were making final adjustments to one of the ships, while Daphne and Dr. Vex huddled over a holographic display of the control interface. Vincent strode over to Daphne, placing a hand on her shoulder. She looked up, her eyes meeting his. For a moment, the chaos around them faded away, replaced by an electric charge that passed between them. "Ready for this?" Vincent asked softly. Daphne nodded, a determined smile playing at her lips. "With you? Always." The moment was broken by a distant explosion. The unknown vessels had breached the outpost's outer defenses. "Everyone on board now," Vincent shouted, ushering the team towards the chosen ship. As they boarded, Vincent took the pilot's seat, with Daphne beside him as co-pilot. Her hands moved confidently over the alien controls, guided by an intuition she couldn't explain. "Here goes nothing," Vincent muttered as he initiated the launch sequence. The ancient ship hummed to life, lifting off the hangar floor with surprising grace. As they shot out of the bay and into Yada's alien sky, Vincent couldn't help but grin. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they were facing them together, aboard a vessel that represented both Yada's mysterious past and, potentially, humanity's future among the stars. Stars. As they broke through Yada's atmosphere, the ancient ship's systems came alive with a surge of energy. Suddenly, the vessel shimmered and vanished from sight. "What just happened?" Steele exclaimed, his eyes wide with disbelief. Daphne's fingers danced across the control panel, her expression one of wonder. "It's some kind of cloaking technology. We're invisible to anyone looking for us." Vincent nodded approvingly. "That'll give us an edge against our pursuers." "Good work, Daphne." As they ascended higher, the curvature of Yada became visible through the ship's viewports. The planet's alien beauties stretched out before them, a swirling mass of greens and purples unlike anything they had seen before. "We're approaching orbit," Vincent announced, his hands steady on the controls. "Daphne, can you run a scan of the surrounding area?" She nodded, activating the ship's long-range scanners. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a series of blinking dots scattered across the nearby celestial bodies. "These must be the hidden Yadrin outposts," Daphne said, her voice filled with excitement. "And look, there's the moon with the distress signal we detected earlier." Vincent studied the display, his tactical mind already formulating a plan. "That's our best bet for answers. Let's set a course." As they approached the moon, the ship began to shudder violently. Warning lights flashed across the control panel, bathing the cockpit in an ominous red glow. "We're losing power," Steele shouted from his position at the engineering station. "The main drive is failing." Vincent's teeth clenched as he fought with the controls. "Daphne, I need you to reroute all available power to the maneuvering thrusters. We're going in hot." The moon's cratered surface loomed before them, growing larger by the second. Vincent's hands moved with practiced precision, guiding the failing ship towards a relatively flat expanse of terrain. "Brace for impact," he shouted as they entered the moon's thin atmosphere. The ship hit the ground with a bone-jarring thud, skidding across the lunar surface in a shower of dust and debris. When it finally came to rest, an eerie silence fell over the cabin. "Everyone okay?" Vincent called out, his voice rough with exertion. A chorus of groans and affirmatives answered him. Daphne was already unbuckling her harness, moving to check on the rest of the team. "We need to get out and assess our situation," Vincent said, activating the ship's external sensors. "The atmosphere is thin but breathable. Gravity's low, so watch your step." As they exited the damaged craft, the harsh reality of their situation became clear. The moon's surface was a desolate wasteland of rock and dust, stretching as far as the eye could see under an inky black sky. Vincent quickly organized the group. "Daphne, take Steele and Dr. Vex to track down that distress signal. I'll lead the rest to find shelter and salvage what we can from the ship." As the team split up, Vincent's group discovered strange metallic structures protruding from the lunar surface. They were clearly of Yadaran origin, their sleek design a stark contrast to the rugged terrain. "Over here," one of the engineers called out. "I think I've found an entrance." Vincent approached the sealed doorway, its surface covered in familiar Yadaran glyphs. Using tools salvaged from their crash, they managed to pry it open, revealing a dark passage leading underground. Meanwhile, Daphne's team traced the distress signal to a small, fortified facility on the far side of the moon. As they approached, Daphne noticed a control panel near the entrance. "I think I can override the security with my royal access codes," she said, her fingers hovering over the panel. The moment she input the code, alarms blared to life. Defensive turrets emerged from hidden compartments, their weapons trained on the team. "Take cover," Daphne shouted, diving behind a nearby rock formation. Energy bolts sizzled through the air as the team used the moon's low gravity to bound between safe positions. Vincent's voice crackled over their comms. "Daphne, what's your status?" "Under fire," she replied, her voice tense. "The facility's defenses are active." Before Vincent could respond, a new signal cut through the chaos. A holographic image flickered to life between the defensive turrets, revealing the weathered face of an elderly Yadaran male. "I am Archkeeper Xylorn," the figure announced, his voice filled with authority. "Who dares to breach our sanctuary?" Daphne stepped forward, her royal bearing evident even in the harsh conditions. "I am Daphne Vex, of the Royal House of Yadar. We come seeking aid and answers." Xylorn's eyes widened in recognition. A descendant of the royal line? Impossible. And yet, I sense the truth in your words. The defensive turrets powered down, retracting into their hidden compartments. Xylorn's hologram gestured towards the facility's entrance. "Enter, children of Yadar and Earth. There is much we must discuss." As the team regrouped inside the facility, they found themselves surrounded by technology beyond their wildest dreams. Xylorn explained his role as the last guardian of Yadar's most advanced creations. "This facility houses a long-range communication device," he said, leading them to a massive circular platform. "With it, we can contact Yadar, but its power source has long since failed." Vincent stepped forward, his mind already working on a solution. "We might be able to use components from our ship to get it running." As the team worked to integrate their technology with the ancient Yadaran systems, Vincent found himself alone with Daphne in a secluded part of the facility. The stress of their ordeal and the close quarters brought their simmering attraction to the surface. Their eyes met, and in that moment, all the tension and unspoken feelings between them ignited. Vincent pulled Daphne close, their bodies pressing together in the low gravity. Their lips met in a passionate kiss, the world around them fading away. The moment was shattered by a blaring alarm. They broke apart, breathing heavily, as Steele's voice came over the comms. "Captain, we've got incoming. Multiple ships entering orbit." Vincent and Daphne exchanged a determined look. There would be time to explore their feelings later. Right now, they had a battle to win. "Everyone to your stations," Vincent ordered, his voice steady. "Daphne, work with Xylorn to get that communicator online. The rest of you, prepare for a fight." As the team rushed to their positions, the first enemy ships began their descent towards the moon's surface. Vincent took a deep breath, his mind clear and focused. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Together as a team. The moment of quiet grit was shattered by the sound of engines roaring through the thin lunar atmosphere. "Incoming." Steele's voice crackled over the comms. Multiple ships entering orbit. Vincent's mind shifted into high gear. He quickly assessed their resources and position, formulating a plan of defense. "Everyone listen up," he commanded, his voice steady and authoritative. "We need to fortify this facility. Steele, take a team and set up defensive positions at the main entrance. Use whatever Yadrin tech you can get your hands on." As Steele moved to comply, Vincent turned to Daphne and Xylorn. "You two, focus on getting that communicator online. It's our best shot at calling for help." Daphne nodded, her eyes meeting Vincent's for a brief, charged moment before she hurried off with the Archkeeper. Vincent led the remaining team members to the facility's armory. The room was filled with an array of sleek, otherworldly weapons that hummed with barely suppressed energy. "Grab what you can carry," Vincent instructed, hefting a rifle-like device. "And watch your step. The low gravity will affect your aim and movement." As they distributed the weapons, the first tremors of nearby impacts shook the facility. Vincent activated his comm link. "Steele, status report." "Outer defenses are breached, Captain," Steele replied, his voice tense. "They're moving fast in this low-G environment." Vincent gritted his teeth. "Hold your position. We're on our way." The team moved through the facility's corridors, their steps unnaturally light in the reduced gravity. As they approached the main entrance, the sounds of energy weapons discharging grew louder. Vincent signaled for the team to take cover behind a series of sturdy consoles. He peered around the edge, assessing the situation. A group of armored figures was advancing through the entrance, their movements jerky and unpracticed in the low gravity. "On my mark," Vincent whispered, raising his weapon. 3, 2, 1. Fire. The air filled with streaks of energy as both sides exchanged fire. Vincent's team had the advantage of cover and preparation, but the enemy's superior numbers were pushing them back. "Steele," Vincent called out over the din of battle. "We need those defenses online now." "Working on it, Captain." Steele's voice was strained. "These systems are ancient, but I think I've almost got it." Suddenly, a low hum filled the air. Panels slid open in the walls and ceiling, revealing a network of energy turrets. They came to life with a burst of light, targeting the invading forces with unerring precision. The tide of battle turned instantly. The enemy troops, caught in the open, were forced to retreat under the withering fire from the facility's defenses. As the last of the invaders fell back, Vincent allowed himself a moment of relief. But he knew this was only the beginning. "Good work, everyone," he said, scanning the room for injuries. "But stay alert. They'll be back, and in greater numbers." A crackle of static came over the comm, followed by Daphne's excited voice. Vincent, we've done it. The communicator is online. Vincent felt a surge of hope. Can you reach yet? Better than that, Daphne replied. I've made contact with a Yatteran peacekeeping fleet. They're on their way, but it'll take them hours to reach us. Vincent's mind raced, calculating their odds. Then we need to hold out until they arrive. Steele, what's the status on those defenses? The energy shields are operational, Captain, Steele reported. But they won't last forever against a sustained assault. As if on cue, a series of explosions rocked the facility. Vincent rushed to a nearby viewport, his heart sinking at the sight of more enemy ships descending from orbit. They're coming in force now, he muttered. Then, turning to his team, he raised his voice. All right, people, this is where we make our stand. We've got advanced tech, a fortified position, and help on the way. Let's show these rogues what happens when they mess with the best of Earth and Yad. The team responded with a chorus of determined affirmations. As they moved to their defensive positions, Vincent caught Daphne's eye across the room. In that fleeting glance, a world of unspoken emotions passed between them. Then the moment was gone, replaced by the urgent need for action. Vincent turned his attention to the tactical display, watching as the enemy forces began their coordinated assault on the facility. The battle for the moon had truly begun, and with it, the fate of human-Yatteran relations hung in the balance. Vincent tightened his grip on his weapon, ready to face whatever came next. Their way. Vincent moved swiftly through the chaos, barking orders and coordinating the defense. Hold the line, he shouted, firing his weapon at the advancing enemy forces. The air crackled with energy bolts as both sides exchanged fire. Suddenly, a stray shot struck the console next to Vincent, sending shrapnel flying. He felt a sharp pain in his side but pushed through it, focusing on the battle at hand. Across the room, Daphne was working furiously to maintain the facility's defenses. She winced as a nearby explosion rocked the structure, causing her to lose her footing in the low gravity. As she stumbled, an enemy soldier took aim at her exposed position. Vincent saw the threat and reacted instantly. He launched himself through the air, using the moon's reduced gravity to his advantage. His body slammed into Daphne, knocking them both clear of the incoming fire. They tumbled together, coming to rest behind a sturdy barricade. Thanks, Daphne gasped, her eyes meeting Vincent's. For a moment, the battle faded away as they lay there, bodies pressed close. The moment was shattered by Steele's voice over the comm. Captain, we've got them on the run. Vincent and Daphne scrambled to their feet, rejoining the fray. True to Steele's words, the enemy forces were falling back, overwhelmed by the combined might of the facility's ancient defenses and the team's coordinated efforts. As the last of the invaders retreated, a cheer went up from the defenders. Vincent allowed himself a small smile of relief before turning to assess the situation. Steele, status report, he called out, wincing as the adrenaline wore off and the pain in his side flared. We've secured the perimeter, Captain, Steele replied, approaching with a data pad in hand. No casualties on our side, but we've got some injuries. The enemy's been routed for now, but I doubt they'll stay gone for long. Vincent nodded, his mind already working on their next move. All right, let's get everyone patched up and... He was cut off by Daphne's excited voice. Vincent, the Yatteran peacekeeping fleet has entered the system. They'll be here within the hour. A wave of relief washed over the team. They had held out long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Good work, everyone, Vincent said, his voice filled with pride. Let's secure this facility and prepare for their arrival. As the team moved to carry out his orders, Vincent felt a hand on his arm. He turned to find Daphne looking at him with concern. You're injured, she said, gesturing to the growing stain on his side. Vincent waved off her concern. It's nothing. We've got more important things to. His words trailed off as he stumbled, the blood loss and exhaustion finally catching up to him. Daphne caught him, supporting his weight. "Come on, hero," she said, her tone a mix of exasperation and fondness. "Let's get you to the medical bay." Together, they made their way through the facility, leaning on each other for support. The rest of the team was busy securing the area and tending to the wounded, their movements efficient despite the low gravity. As they entered the medical bay, they found Dr. Vex already hard at work, treating the injured with a combination of human and Yadaran medical techniques. "Captain, Princess," Dr. Vex greeted them, gesturing to an empty bed. "Let's take a look at those injuries." As Dr. Vex examined them, Steele entered the room, his face lit with excitement. "Captain, you're not going to believe this," he said, his words tumbling out in a rush. "We've found a hidden chamber filled with advanced Yadaran medical equipment. It's like nothing I've ever seen before." Vincent and Daphne exchanged a look of surprise. Even as they processed this new information, the facility's communication system crackled to life. "Attention, Lunar Facility," a commanding voice echoed through the speakers. "This is Admiral Thorin of the Yadaran Peacekeeping Fleet. We have entered orbit and are preparing to land. Please respond." As Daphne moved to answer the call, Vincent turned to Steele. "Show me this hidden chamber," he said, pushing himself off the bed despite Dr. Vex's protests. Steele led them through a series of winding corridors, eventually arriving at a previously sealed doorway. Inside, they found a room filled with sleek, advanced medical equipment that hummed with impossibly strong energy. "Incredible," Daphne breathed, her eyes wide as she took in the sight. Before they could explore further, Archkeeper Xylorn appeared at the entrance, his aged face creased with worry. "We must secure this technology immediately," he said, his voice urgent. "There is much here that could be dangerous in the wrong hands." As they began the process of cataloging and securing the ancient Yadaran technology, the sound of ships landing outside echoed through the facility. The Yadaran Peacekeeping Fleet had arrived, marking the beginning of a new chapter in their adventure. Vincent looked at Daphne, both of them aware that their ordeal was just the beginning. The discovery of this hidden outpost and the attack by the rogue faction had raised more questions than answers. As they prepared to meet with Admiral Thorin, they knew that the true challenge was just beginning. The discovery of this hidden outpost and the attack by the rogue faction had raised more questions than answers. As they prepared to meet with Admiral Thorin, they knew that the true challenge was just starting. The arrival of the Yadaran Peacekeeping Fleet brought a flurry of activity to the lunar facility. As Vincent and Daphne briefed Admiral Thorin on the recent events, a plan began to take shape. The rogue faction's attack on the outpost was likely just the beginning of a larger scheme, and they needed to act quickly to prevent further aggression. "We can't let them regroup," Vincent said, his voice firm as he addressed the gathered team and Yadaran officials. "We need to take the fight to them." Admiral Thorin nodded in agreement. "Our intelligence suggests they have multiple hidden bases throughout this sector. We must strike swiftly and decisively." With the combined resources of the human expedition and the Yadaran fleet, a daring plan was set in motion. Vincent, Daphne, and a select team would pilot a squadron of ancient Yadaran fighters, modified with advanced cloaking technology. Their mission: to locate and neutralize the rogue faction's primary base of operations. As the team prepared for departure, Vincent found himself in the hangar, running final checks on his fighter. The sleek, otherworldly design of the ancient vessel still amazed him, despite the numerous modifications made to accommodate human pilots. Daphne approached, her royal circlet glinting in the harsh hangar lights. "Are you ready for this?" she asked, her voice a mix of excitement and apprehension. Vincent nodded, his eyes scanning the cockpit's unfamiliar controls. "As ready as I'll ever be. These ships are incredible, but they're going to take some getting used to." As they boarded their respective fighters, the rest of the team took their positions. Dr. Vex, Caxlor and Chief Engineer Steele each commanded their own vessels, while additional specialists filled out the squadron. The hangar bay door slid open, revealing the star-studded blackness of space. Vincent took a deep breath, centering himself as he gripped the controls. All units report in, he commanded over the comm system. One by one, the team confirmed their readiness. With a final glance at Daphne's fighter beside him, Vincent gave the order. Launch! The squadron of ancient Yadaran fighters streaked out of the lunar facility, their modified engines purring with hardly restrained power. As they climbed away from the moon's surface, Vincent marveled at the responsiveness of his craft. It was unlike anything he had ever flown before, seeming to react to his thoughts as much as his physical inputs. "All right, team, form up," Vincent called out as they cleared the moon's orbit. "We're heading for the Centauri system. Intelligence suggests the rogue faction has a significant presence there." As the fighters fell into formation, Daphne's voice came over the comm. "I'm picking up some unusual readings on the long-range sensors. There's a dense asteroid field ahead that wasn't on our charts." Vincent frowned, studying his own sensor readouts. "Confirmed. We'll have to alter our course. Everyone stay alert and be prepared for evasive maneuvers." The squadron approached the unexpected asteroid field, the massive chunks of rock and ice looming before them. Vincent led the way, his fighter weaving between the slowly tumbling boulders with grace and precision. The rest of the team followed, their movements becoming more fluid as they adjusted to the unique handling of their ancient craft. As they navigated through the treacherous field, Caxlor's voice crackled over the comm. "Captain, I'm detecting an energy signature coming from a nearby planetoid. It doesn't match any known Yadaran or human patterns." Vincent's interest was immediately piqued. "Could be related to our rogue friends. Let's check it out. Everyone, form up on me. We're going in for a closer look." The squadron altered course, heading towards the unassuming planetoid. As they drew nearer, the true nature of the energy signature became clear. Hidden within the rocky surface was a massive installation, its presence masked by advanced cloaking technology. "It's a base," Daphne breathed, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and concern. "And it looks like they've spotted us." As if in response to her words, the planetoid surface seemed to come alive. Concealed weapon emplacements emerged from hidden compartments, their barrels tracking the approaching fighters. "Evasive action," Vincent shouted, just as the first volley of energy blasts erupted from the base's defenses. The squadron scattered, their ancient fighters dancing between the streams of deadly energy with impossible agility. Vincent's mind raced as he rolled in dove, narrowly avoiding the relentless barrage. They needed to find a way to land and investigate the base without being shot out of the sky. His eyes scanned the planetoid surface, searching for any weakness in its defenses. "There," he called out, spotting a deep ravine that seemed to be outside the range of the defensive turrets. "Everyone follow me. We're going in hot." Vincent dug towards the ravine, his fighter skimming dangerously close to the rocky surface. The rest of the squadron followed suit, their engines screaming as they pushed the ancient craft to their limits. With a final burst of speed, they plunged into the ravine, the sounds of weapons fire fading as the high walls shielded them from the base's defenses. Vincent guided his fighter to a smooth landing on a small plateau, the rest of the team touching down around him. As the engines powered down, Vincent took a moment to catch his breath. The adrenaline of the dogfight still coursed through his veins, but he knew the real challenge was yet to come. "Good flying, everyone," he said as he popped the canopy of his fighter. "But now comes the hard part. We need to infiltrate that base and find out what the rogue faction is up to." The team gathered around Vincent, their faces a mix of tenacity and apprehension. They had successfully evaded the base's outer defenses, but they all knew that the true test lay ahead. As they checked their weapons and equipment, Vincent couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in his team's resilience and skill. "All right," he said, his voice low and steady. "Let's move out. Stay low, stay quiet, and stay alert. We don't know what we're walking into, but whatever it is, we'll face it together." With a final nod to Daphne, Vincent led the way out of the ravine and towards the hidden base. The fate of human-Yadrin relations, and perhaps the entire sector, hung in the balance as they began their covert infiltration. Vincent led the way out of the ravine, his team moving swiftly and silently towards the hidden base. As they approached, the facility's imposing structure loomed before them, its advanced cloaking technology no longer concealing its presence. Using hand signals, Vincent directed the team to split into two groups. He and Daphne would lead the primary infiltration, while Dr. Vex and Caxlor provided cover and monitored for any incoming threats. As they reached the outer perimeter, Daphne accessed a concealed panel, her fingers flying over the alien controls. With a soft hiss, a hidden entrance slid open, revealing a dimly lit corridor. "We're in," Vincent whispered, drawing his weapon. "Stay alert." They moved through the base's winding passages, the air thick with tension. Strange machinery hummed around them, emitting an eerie blue glow. As they turned a corner, they encountered their first patrol of rogue faction guards. Vincent reacted instantly, dropping low and firing his weapon with precision. Daphne moved in perfect sync, her royal combat training evident as she swiftly neutralized two more guards. The skirmish ended quickly, leaving no time for alarms to be raised. "Nice work," Vincent said, his eyes meeting Daphne's for a moment before they pressed on. As they delved deeper into the facility, they discovered a vast hangar filled with partially constructed ships. Vincent's eyes widened as he took in the sight. "These are hybrid designs," he muttered, examining the closest vessel. "They're combining Yadrin and human technology." Daphne nodded grimly. "This confirms our worst fears. They're building a fleet capable of challenging both our civilizations." Working quickly, they gathered intelligence and planted charges at key structural points. As they finished, Caxlor's voice crackled over their comms. "Captain, we've detected multiple ships approaching. It appears to be the main rogue faction fleet." Vincent's mind raced. "We need to move. Now." They sprinted back through the base, alarms blaring as their presence was finally detected. As they emerged from the hidden entrance, the sky above was filled with the incoming rogue faction ships. "Everyone, to your fighters," Vincent shouted, leading the charge back to the ravine where they had landed. They reached their ancient Yadrin craft just as the first enemy ships began to land. Vincent leaped into his cockpit, systems coming to life around him. He glanced over to see Daphne settling into her own fighter, her face set with commitment. "All units, launch immediately," Vincent commanded. "We'll have to fight our way out." The squadron of ancient fighters rose from the ravine, engines roaring to life. They burst into the space above the planetoid, immediately engaging the rogue faction fleet. The battle was intense and chaotic. Vincent's fighter danced through space, its advanced technology allowing him to outmaneuver the enemy's ships. He watched as Daphne executed a perfect barrel roll, taking out two pursuers with a well-aimed shot. As they fought, the charges they had planted detonated, ripping through the hidden base. The rogue faction fleet faltered, caught off guard by the unexpected explosion. "This is our chance," Vincent called out. "Full power to engines. We're punching through their lines." The squadron formed up, creating a wedge formation with Vincent and Daphne at the lead. They surged forward, cutting through the disorganized enemy fleet. As they broke free of the battle, Vincent opened a channel to Admiral Thorin's flagship. "Mission accomplished, Admiral. The base is destroyed, and we've gathered crucial intelligence. Requesting immediate extraction." "Well done, Captain," Thorin's voice replied. "Proceed to these coordinates. We'll rendezvous there." As they sped away from the planetoid, leaving the chaos of battle behind, Vincent allowed himself a moment of relief. They had struck a significant blow against the rogue faction, but he knew this was only the beginning. The squadron of ancient fighters approached Admiral Thorin's flagship, its massive form dwarfing their small craft. As they entered the docking bay, Vincent saw a flurry of activity, with teams of technicians and officials waiting to debrief them. Vincent and Daphne disembarked from their fighters, the adrenaline of the mission still coursing through their veins. They were immediately met by a stern-faced officer who ushered them towards a nearby corridor. "This way, please," the officer said briskly. "Admiral Thorin and the Council are waiting for your report in the high-security briefing room." As they walked, Vincent glanced at Daphne, noting the mixture of exhaustion and excitement in her eyes. They had just pulled off an incredibly dangerous mission, and now they faced the task of explaining its far-reaching implications to their superiors. The doors to the briefing room slid open, revealing Admiral Thorin and a panel of human and Yadran officials seated around a large, holographic display table. The room fell silent as Vincent and Daphne entered, all eyes fixed on the two heroes who had just returned from the front lines of this escalating conflict. Admiral Thorin nodded gravely. "Captain, Princess, we're eager to hear your report. What did you find on that hidden base?" Vincent stepped forward, his posture straight despite the fatigue settling into his bones. He began to recount their mission, describing the infiltration, the discovery of the hybrid warships, and the thwarted attack plans. As he spoke, holographic images of the base and the enemy fleet appeared on the display table, bringing his words to life. Daphne joined in, her voice steady as she detailed the intelligence they had gathered from the base's computer systems. "We have reason to believe this isn't their only outpost," she said, her eyes scanning the faces of the officials. "There could be more hidden bases throughout the sector." A murmur of concern rippled through the room. Admiral Thorin leaned forward, his expression grave. "This is indeed troubling news. We must act quickly to prevent further aggression." The panel deliberated, their voices rising and falling as they discussed the implications of this new information. Vincent and Daphne stood silently, waiting for the Council's decision. Finally, Admiral Thorin turned to address them. "We've come to a decision. We're forming a joint Human-Yadran task force to investigate and neutralize any remaining rogue faction cells." He looked directly at Vincent. "Captain, we want you to lead the military aspect of this task force." Vincent straightened, a mix of pride and persistence flooding through him. "I'm honored, Admiral. I won't let you down." Thorin then turned to Daphne. "Princess, your diplomatic skills will be crucial. We're assigning you to handle negotiations with potential defectors from the rogue faction." Daphne nodded, her chin lifted with perseverance. "I understand, Admiral. I'll do everything in my power to bring this conflict to a peaceful resolution." As the briefing concluded, Admiral Thorin approached them once more. "There's one more thing," he said, his voice lowered. "The Yadran High Council and Human Diplomatic Corps have requested your immediate presence on Yadr. We need to discuss the future of human-Yadran relations in light of recent events." Vincent and Daphne exchanged glances, the weight of their responsibility settling on their shoulders. They had just returned from one mission, and already another, potentially more significant task lay ahead. As they left the briefing room to prepare for their journey to Yadr, Chief Engineer Steele approached them, his face creased with concern. "Captain, Princess," he said, his voice hushed. "I've made a concerning discovery about the ancient fighters we used in the mission. They're showing signs of instability, possibly due to the integration of our modern tech with their ancient systems. I'm not sure they'll be safe for long-distance space travel." Vincent frowned, processing this new complication. "Understood, Steele. What are our options?" Before Steele could respond, an alarm blared through the ship's speakers. "All personnel, report to battle stations. Unidentified vessels approaching. This is not a drill." Vincent and Daphne shared a look of grit. Their mission to Yadr would have to wait. Once again, they found themselves on the front lines of a conflict that threatened both their peoples. As they raced towards the command center, Vincent couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much larger storm brewing on the horizon. Horizon of space. The unidentified vessels closed in rapidly, their sleek designs unlike anything Vincent had seen before. All fighters, prepare for immediate launch, Admiral Thorin's voice boomed over the intercom. Captain Vincent, Princess Daphne, report to the bridge immediately. Vincent and Daphne sprinted through the corridors, crew members rushing past them to their battle stations. As they entered the bridge, the main view screen displayed a swarm of alien ships, their hulls gleaming with an iridescent sheen. Status report, Vincent demanded, stepping up to the tactical display. Unknown vessels have breached our outer defense perimeter, a junior officer reported. They're not responding to hails. Before anyone could react further, the alien ships suddenly ceased their advance. A moment of tense silence fell over the bridge. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," the communications officer announced. Admiral Thorin nodded. "On screen." The view screen flickered to life, revealing a familiar face that made Vincent's breath catch in his throat. It was Zara, his former second-in-command who had been presumed dead after a mission gone wrong years ago. "Vincent," Zara's voice crackled through the speakers. "We need your help. We've come home." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. The unidentified ships turned out to be a long-lost human Yadaran colony fleet, led by Zara and a group of survivors who had been stranded in a distant part of the galaxy. Their return couldn't have come at a more crucial time. As the colony ships docked with the flagship, Vincent and Daphne worked tirelessly to coordinate the integration of the returned colonists. The newcomers brought with them advanced technology and vital intelligence about the rogue faction's operations in the outer reaches of known space. With this unexpected reinforcement, the tide of the battle turned decisively in their favor. The combined forces of the Human Yadaran Alliance and the returned colonists pushed back against the rogue faction, driving them from the system in a series of lightning-fast skirmishes. As the last of the enemy's ships retreated, a cheer went up through the fleet. Victory had been snatched from the jaws of defeat, and the capital of Yada stood unscathed. In the aftermath of the battle, Vincent found himself standing before the ornate doors of the celestial amphitheater. Daphne stood beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. They exchanged a glance, both aware of the weight of the moment. "Ready?" Daphne asked, her voice soft but steady. Vincent nodded, squaring his shoulders. "Let's do this." The doors swung open, revealing the grand chamber of the High Council. Rows of seats rose in a sweeping arc, filled with human and Yadaran representatives. As Vincent and Daphne entered, a wave of applause washed over them, the sound echoing off the vaulted ceiling. Admiral Thorin stepped forward, his face solemn but his eyes shining with pride. In his hands, he held two medals, one human, one Yadaran, each gleaming in the soft light of the chamber. "Captain Vincent, Princess Daphne," Thorin's voice carried clearly through the amphitheater. "For your exceptional bravery and unwavering dedication to the preservation of peace between our peoples, I present you with the highest honors of both our species." As Thorin pinned the medals to their uniforms, Vincent felt a surge of emotion. He glanced at Daphne, seeing the same mix of pride and humility reflected in her eyes. The applause had barely died down when an elder Yadaran counselor rose to her feet. "Esteemed colleagues," she began, her voice ringing with authority. "In light of recent events, we propose a formal alliance between humans and Yadarans. And who better to lead us into this new era than the two heroes standing before us?" A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. Vincent felt Daphne's hand tighten on his arm, her breath catching slightly. "Furthermore," the counselor continued, "we move to officially reinstate Princess Daphne to her rightful place in the royal lineage and appoint her as chief diplomat for interspecies relations." The chamber erupted in cheers once more. Vincent turned to Daphne, seeing tears of joy glistening in her eyes. Without thinking, he pulled her into a tight embrace, propriety forgotten in the face of this monumental moment. As the council began to discuss the details of the proposed alliance, Vincent felt a gentle tug on his sleeve. Daphne nodded towards a side door, leading to a balcony overlooking the capital city. They slipped out quietly, leaving the buzz of discussion behind them. The cool night air washed over them as they stepped onto the balcony. The city sprawled below, its lights twinkling like earthbound stars. Yada's twin moons hung low in the sky, casting a soft, ethereal glow over the landscape. Vincent turned to Daphne, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. The moonlight caught in her hair, giving her an almost otherworldly beauty. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words seemed to catch in his throat. Daphne, he began, uncharacteristically nervous. These past few months, working with you, fighting alongside you, I've never met anyone like you. Daphne's eyes softened, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. Vincent, she said softly, stepping closer. You don't have to say anything. Before Vincent could respond, Daphne closed the distance between them. Her lips met his in a kiss that sent electricity coursing through his body. He pulled her closer, one hand cupping her face as the other wrapped around her waist. The moment seemed to stretch into eternity, the rest of the world fading away until there was nothing but the two of them, silhouetted against the backdrop of Yadder's moons. Suddenly, a shrill alarm cut through the night, shattering the moment. Vincent and Daphne broke apart, their training kicking in instantly. What's happening? Daphne asked, her voice sharp with concern. Before Vincent could answer, Admiral Thorin's voice crackled over their comm units. Captain, Princess, report to the command center immediately. Long-range sensors have detected a massive unidentified object entering the system. Vincent and Daphne shared a look, the intimacy of moments ago replaced by the focus of seasoned warriors. Without a word, they turned and raced back into the celestial amphitheater, ready to face whatever new challenge the universe had thrown their way. As they ran, Vincent's mind raced with possibilities. The rogue faction returning with reinforcements? A new unknown threat? Whatever it was, he knew that with Daphne by his side, they would face it head-on. The command center was a flurry of activity when they arrived. Holographic displays showed a massive object, easily dwarfing any ship they had ever encountered, slowly making its way towards Yadder. What are we looking at, Admiral? Vincent asked, stepping up to the main display. Thorin shook his head, his brow furrowed. Unknown, Captain. It's not matching any known configurations in our database. Vincent studied the readouts, his mind working quickly. Suddenly, an idea struck him. The ancient Yadderan technology we discovered, he said, turning to Daphne. Could we use it to investigate this anomaly? Daphne's eyes lit up with understanding. It's possible. The sensors on those ships are far more advanced than anything we have now. It's risky, Thorin warned, but it might be our best option. Vincent nodded, his decision made. Assemble a team. We'll take one of the retrofitted ancient vessels and get a closer look at our visitor. As the crew scrambled to prepare for the mission, Vincent caught Daphne's eye. A silent understanding passed between them. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.